ready, David?
Yes, I'm ready.
Lisa, ready?
What's your jacket today, Chuck?
If you ever, you're an Android, so if you ever need a
You got it
charger,
on.
I got an extra.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Always carry at least two.
I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. We'll stand for a moment of silence and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to welcome everybody today, and we'll start with the roll call. So, Madam Clerk, would you please give us the roll call?
Jamie Girardi?
Here.
Derek Conklin?
Here.
Peter Hansel? John Moody?
Here.
Christopher Poole?
Here.
Richard Snello?
Here.
Chairman Charles Gray?
Here. And the proof of publication, please.
The items were advertised in the San Jose Times on April 19, 2023 and April 26, 2023, and by affidavit of certified mailings and site postings.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes as submitted, please.
Motion to approve the minutes from the February 2nd and February 16th meeting.
Second.
We have motion and both seconds. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Okay, so just so that some of you may not have been here before, I'll just say that the Planning Commission is appointed by the Board of County Commissioners, and we meet twice a month. We serve as the local planning agency, and we hold public hearings and transmit to the Board of County Commissioners recommendations on comprehensive plan amendments, land development code amendments, land rezonings and conditional use requests, and the Planning Commission is the final decision-making body for special exceptions, certain appeals, variance requests, and certain alternative standard requests. However, final decisions may be appealed to the Board of County Commissioners. If anyone is in opposition to any comprehensive plan or land development code amendment, rezoning, conditional use, or any item where the Planning Commission transmits a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, it's important for you to attend the Board of County Commissioners meeting as well. And we have a list of those dates if you need them. For those of you who are not familiar with the sequence of the meetings, we have three sections. We have continuances, we have consent, and we have regular items. We'll go through the continuances one at a time, and if as they're called out, if you want that particular item heard, if you want to discuss it or have something you want to say about it, questions, raise your hand and we'll pull it from consent, and it'll go on to the regular items. We have also continuances, and that will be where typically the staff or the applicant has requested a continuance for any number of reasons, and it's been our tradition to approve those continuance requests unless there are extenuating circumstances. Applicants will have three minutes to present their application, and the objectors or questioners will have 3 minutes to state their concerns. So following the statement of concerns, the applicant will have an opportunity to come back up and typically have a 5-minute period to respond to those concerns. If there's been any requests at least 24 hours prior to this meeting in writing for additional time, that time may be granted. And I think we had one, didn't we, Denise?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Item P7 has been granted 30 minutes of time.
Okay. So we had one. Now, before we go any further, any of you who have phones, including me, please put them in the silent position so we don't interrupt anybody that's that may be speaking. But before we start the regular meeting, I want to open the meeting for anybody here is here to speak at anything that is not on today's agenda. Is anyone here to speak on something that's not on the agenda today? Are you here to speak that? Okay, if you give your name and address, please.
Nancy Hayeswood, 34110 A Nice Place. I'm here about the Northeast Rural Area
Okay,
Plan.
before you start, I'm just gonna swear everybody in at once that may speak, okay? So if you'll raise your right hand, stand and raise your right hand. Anyone who plans to give testimony, okay?
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay, so Nancy, and you're here to speak on something that's not on today's agenda.
I'm sorry?
You're here to speak on something that's not on today's agenda.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Very good.
I live in the Northeast Rural Area Plan, so I and some other citizens, it is our major concern over there. The Northeast Rural Area Protected Area Plan is missing some things from the comp plan. We still don't have commercial. And we don't have a transition area around it. And we've kind of waited a long time for this. We wonder if you wouldn't put it on your list, you know, like your staff did do some plans for the commercial area, this landscaping and design standards, but nothing's happened. I assume they're languishing on somebody's desk somewhere. I'd like to see them brought back and the Northeast Rural Protected Area Plan finished. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Nancy. Is it anybody from the staff have a comment? Okay, Dave, any suggestions?
Mr. Peters is going to get up there.
All right, thank you, Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Victoria Pitos, Planning and Development. Just since you asked for a response, we are working on the Northeast Rural commercial standards that would be incorporated into the Land Development Code. My understanding is that they're entering final draft phase now, and that it's going to begin its journey on the road toward a Land Development Code amendment coming up now in the next few months. So it's fairly imminent. I don't want to put an exact date to it because we haven't really published any dates just yet to bring it to the Planning Commission.
All right. Great,
That's
thank you,
the update.
Terry. I appreciate that. I think gives her a good idea what you're doing, so I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay. Deborah, you ready?
As ready as I'll ever be.
I doubt.
Denise Hernandez, Planning and Development. We're going to start with item PC3, special exception, PDD 237695, Gun Highway LLC and Ice House of St. Petersburg, Reconnections Education Center. It's a special exception for a private school in a C2 general commercial district. The staff has requested a continuance to the June 8th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting at 1:30 in Dade City.
So to June 8th. Okay, is the applicant present? Is anyone here to object? Anybody on WebEx?
We have no one on WebEx for that particular item. We only have one person on WebEx for item P7, and that's part of the applicant's team.
Okay, thank you. So do we have a motion to?
Motion to approve the continuance?
Second.
We have a motion in 2 seconds. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, like sign. Okay, motion carries.
Mr. Chair, we're going to now move on to another continuance item that is on your addendum agenda, and that's AP8, PDD 230360. It's a development agreement for Aprilli Development Agreement, Connected City, King Lane Partners Owner LP, for development agreement for the Aprilli MPUD to design, permit, and construct roadway improvements in exchange for transportation development fee credits And that item is a request to continue the item to the May 18th LPA meeting at 1:30 in Newport Richey.
Okay. And the applicant is present, or no? Okay, anyone here to object? All right, any further discussion? Got I hear a motion?
Motion to approve the continuance?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Following
Opposed,
item is
like
PC.
sign.
Sorry.
Okay, sorry.
No, I apologize, I jumped ahead. Following item is PC4, PDD 237674. It's a zoning amendment, Northwood MPUD Master Plan Unit Development, Taylor Morrison of Florida, Inc. It's a rezoning request from an MPUD Master Plan Unit Development District to an MPUD Master Plan Unit Development District to add car wash as a use for parcel C7. Comes to you with a recommendation of approval with conditions as included in your agenda packet.
All right. Is the applicant present?
Virtually present, and there are some members of her team here.
Okay. Anyone here to object? All right, since it's on consent, I guess we'll leave it on consent. Is there anything else? Yeah, there's another one on consent, so just keep going then.
So PC5, I do want you to call to see if there's someone here for that, because we do have someone signed up, but we're not sure if it's the applicant. It's PDD 237707, special exception. That's a Dade LLC, Kelly Corner. It's a special exception for a travel trailer RV park in an AR agricultural residential district. Comes to you with a recommendation of approval with conditions as included in your agenda packet.
All right, is the applicant present? Okay. Is anyone here to object? I don't see anyone. Is the one that you said might be on WebEx?
That was the applicant's representative who signed up to speak.
Great, gotcha.
Wasn't sure.
Okay, so no objection, so we'll leave that on consent.
On item PC6, we're pulling that from the consent agenda. That's PDD 230241. There are 2 folks that are signed up to speak for that item. So based on that, that is the end of your consent agenda.
Okay, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended?
So moved.
We have a motion and
Second.
we have a second. Any further discussion of the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Okay,
So we'll just take off on with PC6, and Hyatt Mazzilli will be presenting that to you.
okay.
Good afternoon, Hayat Mazzilli, Planning and Development. And I will be presenting item PC6 once it comes up on the screen.
Okay. There we go.
All right. Item PC6 is actually PDD 230241. It's a small-scale comprehensive plan amendment in the name of CPAS 2210 Bittman Massey Happy Hill.
Okay.
The site is generally located in the North Market area, but it is not within the Northeast Pasco rural area. This is an aerial showing the exact location of the subject site. It is situated in the, I wanted to use the letter spot, but I couldn't get it. It is situated in the northwest corner of State Road 52. Well, actually, it's County Road 52 now, and Happy Hill Road. This site has history, and I'd like to briefly go over it before I move on to the project's overview and the applicant proposal. So in 1975, the county established the C2 general commercial zoning districts along the frontage of the subject's property. This, of course, happened prior to the adoption of the comprehensive plan in 1991, which established the future land use on the entire site as Res 1 or residential 1 dwelling unit per acre. In 2006, the BCC determined the C2 zoning districts to be located within a commercial node. This commercial node is about 10 acres, 660 feet by 660 feet on the southeast of the subject site. The BCC also directed staff to process a county-initiated comprehensive plan amendment to change the future land use on the portion of the site that was Zone C2 but outside of the commercial node. On December 5th of 2006, the BCC approved that county-initiated FLU amendment to change the FLU resignation from Res 1 to ROR, or Retail Office Residential, on the portion that is Zone C2 but not located within the commercial node. The intent of the amendment was to ensure consistency with the comprehensive plan and more specifically Policy FLU 1.52, which addresses the conflict zoning and any inconsistencies or consistencies with the comprehensive plan. It was also to allow for commercial development on the site. On March 10th of 2020, the subject site was removed from the northeast Pasco rural area, and this action was the result of the board's direction in 2006 to remove certain parcels from the northeast Pasco rural because they were intended for commercial use and they were not, excuse me, suitable for the northeast rural development standards. And the subject site was one of those parcels.
And you were doing so well, too.
So they say a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So this is what I have been talking about. This is actually a map of the existing zoning. As you see, the north portion of the site, I cannot get this one to work. The north portion of the site is zone AR, and the frontage portion of the subject property is C2, general commercial. The surrounding zoning to the north are R1, rural density residential. To the east is R2, rural low density, and to the south and west is MPUD, or master plan development. This is the existing future land use map. As you see again, there are 2 FLU designations on the subject site. ROR on about 9.9 acres and Res 1 on 10.23 acres. The surrounding future land use to the north and to the west, we have Res 1, residential 1 dwelling unit per acre. To the east, we have Res 6, residential 6 dwelling unit per acre. And to the south, we have PD, or planned development. It is very important to mention that there is a Category 1 wetland on the southwest corner of the subject site. This wetland occupies about 3 acres, and it cannot be impacted by the development. It is, there's a requirement of a minimum of 25-foot buffer, as well as a conservation easement to be conveyed to the county. And now we get to the project overview. So the applicant is proposing a small-scale comprehensive plan amendment to change the future land use designation from Res 1 and ROR, retail office residential, to COM or commercial on approximately 20.13 acres to allow for commercial development. The applicant is also proposing a comprehensive plan text amendment, sub-area policy FLU 7.162 Pittman, Massey, Happy Hill, to identify potential uses as well as maximum densities and intensities on the site. As mentioned earlier, the location of the site is at the northwest corner of County Road 52 and Happy Hill Road intersection. The resolution to the applicant proposal is to amend FLU, or Future Land Use Map 2-15 and Sheet 15, from Res 1 and ROR to COM, as well as to amend FLU Map 2-9, adding sub-area policy sub-area policy 2-962 Pittman, Massey, Happy Hill. As for the rezoning, a petition in the name of RZ 7706 Pittman, Massey, Happy Hill is filed simultaneously to rezone from AR agricultural residential districts and C2 general commercial districts to C2 general commercial districts. This is the proposed future land use map. As you see, the site will be unified to one FLU, that is COM, or commercial. And the COM FLU is actually a compatible transitional land use to Res 1 on the north and on the west of the subject site, as well as to Res 6 on the east of the subject site. And this compatibility is conditioned with sensitive site designs such as limited hours of operation, limited building heights, and sufficient buffers. And the residential uses to the west are buffered by that Category 1 wetland that I mentioned earlier. The Planning and Development Department found the proposed amendment to be consistent with the following comprehensive plan policies. Policy Flu 815, North Market Area Establishment. Policy Flu 162, Location of Commercial Development. Policy Flu 163, Transitional Land Uses. Policy Flu 164, Neighborhood Commercial Uses. Policy Flu 187, Economic Development. Policy Flu 1810, Preservation of Capacity for Employment Generating Uses. Policy Flu 136, Wetland Mitigation. And Policy Flu 1313, Wetlands and Upland Buffers. In conclusion, the Planning and Development recommends the local planning agency to find the proposed amendment consistent with the comprehensive plan and to recommend approval to the Board of County Commissioners. Thank you.
Very good.
I have two
Yes.
questions. I have two questions.
Yes, sir.
When is the rezoning supposed to come to the planning commission?
It's actually gonna come a month after this, next month? Okay, thank you.
Have you and the applicant discussed the Senate Bill 102 issue? And is the applicant willing to do a deed restriction?
Yes, yes, he will.
Okay. And then my other question is, do you know why when we tried to fix the conflict zoning on this parcel, we left part of it Res 1? I guess Clark's gonna stand up and answer that
Yeah,
question.
yeah, do you want me to? You want to do
If you
it?
think
Oh,
if we- if you
I know
think
the
if-
answer, he just wants to.
Well, I don't care who answers it, I just want the answer.
He needs a reason to get paid.
Clark's paying more than me, so.
I think Clark Hobby and Hobby PA 109 North Breast Street, Tampa, Florida, have been sworn. I'm sorry to cut in there. I've been working on this site since 2002, so I have a little bit of history and I figured it'd be easier for me to answer. So what happened was we should have changed it all to ROR at that time, David, but remember that was before the statutory changes occurred, and we didn't want to go through a large-scale plan amendment at the time that was all going down. So here was the sequence of events. We knew the comprehensive plan was going to change in late 2006, and it was when Barbara was still working at the county, and so we took these in two incremental things. First, we did the commercial node designation, which vested the 10 acres in the corner for potential commercial uses, and then we did as much as we could, which was 9.9 acres around that. So we didn't want to do a large scale because those were so difficult and expensive at the time. Keep in mind, at the time there were even some of them we were having to pay external reviewers for the county, and it was costing like 150 grand to do one, so that's why we didn't do it. So. But the upshot of this site, planning commissioners, is that what we have of a 20-acre site, there are already 18 to 19 acres of it already is either vested commercial, even though it has Res 1 because of the commercial node designation under the old plan. And then we have the ROR around it. So all we're doing is unifying it today. We should have done this years ago, and we just never did. But the board and the staff have, let's just say staff has heavily encouraged me to keep the site commercial. There were discussions about maybe having a townhouse project on it a year ago, and the board and staff didn't think that was such a wise idea. So here we are today, ensuring that the site's gonna stay commercial. That answer it, David?
That answers it, thank you.
Okay, happy to answer any other questions.
With Hyatt about the Senate Bill 102 you're going to.
Yeah, we will, I confirmed with her before the meeting, when we get to the zoning, we don't have any problem with adding the Senate Bill 102 language and a deed restriction to it.
Okay.
And that I'll answer questions. I think a couple of our neighbors are here. Thank you.
Okay.
Clark, let me ask you a quick question, because there was a questionnaire done last year, so that's not going to happen now, the 158 townhomes?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, we converted that application to C2, so
Okay.
we're just going to fill in the C2 and the COM, and that's it.
All right, thanks.
Okay, any other
Thanks.
questions? Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Clark, was there anybody else here to speak for you?
Yep, that's it.
All right. All right, so County have anything to add before we go to the public? Okay, thank you very much. Good job. Okay, so is there someone here in the public that wishes to speak?
Mr. Chair, for this one, we have Nancy Hazelwood and Peggy Byrne here to speak on this item.
All right. So Nancy, why don't you come on up?
Nancy, 34110, A Nice Place. Okay, so this is abutting or very close to the Northeast Rural Protected Area Plan. So if they put this in place, Northeast Rural Protected Area Plan sure will not need any more new commercial. Hopefully that is not being considered with Mr. Pittos and his redeveloping. We just want design standards and landscape standards. So I would ask, because this is so close, that a sub-area plan is created with some nicer conditions, like trees, more trees than the regular comp plan, parking in back, low lighting, something that makes it look nice for the neighbors and for the Northeast Rural Area Plan that's embodying it. Thank you all.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you very much. And that was Peggy, I think. Is it Peggy here? There you go. Did I get that right?
Yes, Peggy
Okay.
Byrne. Good afternoon.
You too.
I live in East Point, abutting this property. Just a little bit of history before I explain what I'm asking for. I received a letter on 4/27 that was both undated and unsigned. The letter had an attorney's law firm, Hobby and Hobby, on the outside of it, but I didn't know who the letter was from, okay? There's a sentence in here, in this letter, that I find particularly egregious. I called, I spoke to different members of the county and ended up speaking with Ms. Mazzilli. The sentence is as follows. If you are in opposition to the above stated application, you will need competent, substantial evidence presented to support your opposition. Gentlemen, I would call this a mafiosa letter, a letter to deter people from coming here. When I spoke to Ms. Mazzilli about it, she assured me she had not seen this letter before it was sent out. Now, perhaps one of you could explain to me, is Mr. Hobby working for the county, or is he following county procedure? And do you provide him with a letter of what to do? Because it seemed to me that this letter was very intimidating, and many of the neighbors felt so, very upset about it. Further, there has been no competent, substantial evidence presented to a single one of us residents regarding this. Apparently, Mr. Hobby said he wasn't required to do a generalized meeting for us to see what the plan was for that property. I'm offended. Then I have to hear the story of how he's a lifelong person of Dade City and he knows everybody. Well, I'll put it to you, while many of us believe some of this stuff wasn't changed. It wasn't changed zoning-wise until State Route 52 became County Route 52. And if you know everybody in the county, well, you can get things done pretty good. That's the assessment so far. I hope I'm wrong. Please prove me wrong. But I don't see that right now. I see a problem here. I see all kinds of issues with a disingenuous financial personal gain by the lawyer and the parties he represents. It's a rubber stamp on an aleatory situation because there have been no controls offered, no argument. It's not serving the public good unless we know what it's going to do. Oh, just pass it and we'll find out. The zoning commission will tell us what it is. That's not acceptable. We have 76 homes in East Point. At just a low ball estimate, that is $26.6 million worth of property that you will affect negatively. I have not approached a single realtor that has not said to me, it's never good to back up to a commercial property. Never. I think all of you know that or you wouldn't be here today. Where is the evidence other than you saying, well, this fits into this boundary and that? What about how it impacts the people? And the county should really know, my time is up. The county should really know, I'll finish up my sentence if you don't mind. The county should know that in a court of law, I could provide multiple people like myself. Before I built my home, I called the county to find out how this was zoned. I knew there were 2 owners on the property there. I was told they were residential. Ms. Mazzilli said, well, they didn't really lie, they just forgot to tell you that was ROR, residential. Now you want to change it to commercial. These people have invested, some of them their life savings. They are county residents. They use very little from the county. We're not sending children to school overall. They're older people. They deserve to be heard. I hope you'll hear this, and my request is that you table this, and that man is told, you will present a general meeting, and we will see what this is. Don't tell me, because it fits into your boundary, that you're all supporting it. And I'm really offended that Mrs. Mazzilli and Mr. Hobby look like they're working together. Well, we're showing you the points of this. What about the homeowners? How are they represented here? They can only rely on you. I hope you'll do the right thing and think about tabling this.
Thank you.
For another meeting.
When was
another
the
time.
East Point neighborhood developed?
I'm sorry, sir?
When was the East Point neighborhood developed?
I don't know, but I can tell you I didn't build. I didn't start to build until 2019. And I was told in 2019, July of 2019 specifically, that it was residential.
But this was zoned C2 in 1975.
If you go to your own map, it was showing now, even looking before this, residential, R1 and ROR. So how is a resident supposed to know what was true?
The zoning map, the zoning was issued, I'm sorry, was it pre-1975?
1975, yes.
Okay.
But it isn't commercial. They haven't presented any evidence why it should be commercial. That's just for financial gain.
My point is, it is commercial, and they have the right.
Well, your map is wrong. If you
They-
go
I
online,
didn't-
you'll see it's different, sir.
They have vested commercial development rights today. They're trying to clean up some conflicts between the zoning and the comprehensive plan, but they've had the right to develop this property commercially since 1975. It hasn't been done yet, but they've had that right.
Well, then I think that you have to correct 2 things, your own website, and you have to correct your own employees. Because I will promise you, there are multiple people that will testify to that. I was told it was residential. People don't invest $400,000, $500,000 in something and say, oh, I'm going to have a grocery store behind me. And everything Mr. Hobby called me, everything he said to me was based on hope. Sir, hope is not a strategy, and nobody should be relying on that. I hope he'll get a Publix there. That's great. And I hope I'll win the lottery, but I'll let you know when it happens.
Okay?
I just hope you realize there is opposition to it. I wanted you to be aware of that before you made that decision. Okay, it's not what we were told. Thank you, but is there any other
Yeah, I
questions?
think that your comment about substantial competent evidence, that's just a typical legal term that's used every time, because we can't take just people's opinions based upon their own neighborhood, not in my backyard kind of a thing. You gotta have.
I do understand that.
No, don't speak anymore, just listen. I'm just telling you, I'm trying to explain to you that we can only accept competent evidence, because there has to be a competent legal reason for you to object. It can't be that you just don't want it there. So if you move into a neighborhood and you find out later that something's going to happen next door to you that you didn't think was going to happen, and you said you did the research, but maybe you didn't do complete research. Just as Mr. Mooney said, that property's been zoned commercial since 1975, since zoning began. We didn't have zoning until then. So there's some research there that there's some
where is
research.
the competent,
Excuse me.
substantial proof that you were going to offer?
I gave you more than your time to speak. I'm trying to be polite and I'm trying to explain it to you. And I'm trying to consider your situation, but you have to understand that when somebody has the legal right to do something, they have the legal right to do something. We can't just willy-nilly say, no, you can't do it because you happen to have a house next door. I can't do that.
But I think you misunderstood what I said, sir.
No, I didn't misunderstand
I'm asking
you.
this person to present what he's doing. There's been no information presented to
I think that's a
homeowners.
great idea. I think it would be nice for him to do that. We can't compel him to do that, but I think it would be a nice gesture.
He's going to be requesting, currently it's a Euclidean zoning district, and he's going to be, as I understand it, that the forthcoming request will be a Euclidean zoning district. So what he will be allowed to do are those uses that are listed explicitly under the C2 zoning district in the land development code. Those are the things that he can do.
He's already told me that he's only going to do what he's required to do. That's it.
Well, he's not required to do anything. It's if he develops, he will develop one of the permitted uses under that district, or he'll come back here and ask for a conditional use or some special exception that's listed under that district.
Thank you. So just to be clear, so I can clear up where our next step would be, the Board of County Commissioners will be meeting at 1:30 on this issue on 6/6.
Is that the right date? Gary,
That's
do you know?
correct.
Yes.
June
Okay.
6th,
Yeah.
1:30.
So is it the same thing? It's already, as everyone says, a done deal? Or we don't
It's
have
not,
any input?
it's not a done deal. It's, you know, we're making a recommendation to the county commission. We aren't making the final decision on this. And, the county commissioners are making the final decision, but what we're telling you, we're trying to tell you in advance that when somebody already has a zoning on their property since 1975 of commercial, why should they be precluded from using that property for commercial use when you all moved in there much, much later?
That is true, sir.
Okay.
However, what's
So
here,
maybe
if it's
somebody
already zoned
should've-
commercial,
should've-
why does he have to be here today?
Maybe somebody should have precluded your residential there.
Everything was residential or ROR.
No, it wasn't.
I think some of the confusion is the difference in differentiating between future land use and zoning.
There's two different things.
I mean, I
There are
just know
two-
what I was
yeah.
told when I called, as were the other residents. So I'm sorry to hear people think that apparently I'm not educated enough that I can understand when I call and ask what something's zoned and someone tells me it's residential. I assure you, I speak English. I
Sure.
understand.
Yeah, and I can't explain why there was if it was represented to you, there was zoned, because it's been, like it's been said multiple times, it's been zoned C2
That's fine,
for
but if it is
a long
zoned or
time.
commercial, then what are we doing here? If it's already commercial, why does they have to appeal for anything?
The reason this is here is to clean up, there's a conflict between the land use and the zoning. And so they're cleaning up the land use. And then
And the
they'll be
future
coming.
land use was adopted way after the zoning was initially assigned to the property. Then there's a section of our comprehensive plan that actually requires the staff, in fact, here it is the applicants having to bear this burden, but the comprehensive plan actually required the staff to come fix these problems. It was known that some of these problems existed, and this is basically a cleanup of that.
Well, then I guess I'm going to have to say that there is opposition to your cleanup event. We don't want it to change any further than it already is, of what it has.
And I think
So
you
there
should
is
go to the
opposition.
county commission meeting and state your case there too.
We will do so. I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Name and ad,
Yeah, I know it was Peggy, but didn't get the last name.
Byrne, B-Y-R-N-E.
address.
Oh, I'm sorry. 12363 East Point Drive.
All right, thank you, Ms. Brown.
So, Mr. Chair, since there's an allegation that our online map is inaccurate, Denise, could you address that?
Yes, we're actually showing it up on the screen. So our online map clearly shows that kind of like sideways lines on there. That's the original C2 portion of the property. If you don't mind clicking on it and then the actual C2 section and scrolling down a little bit. There you go, land use data. So if you click on the side and click again, it'll tell you it's original C2 zoning from, zoning was adopted on November of 1975, but it didn't become effective until December 1st, 75. So it's the original C2 zoning from that time. And then as you can see, another portion of the property is AR, agricultural residential. So it has those two districts on it.
So can you pull up the same map for future land use?
Sure. Take the zoning off though, so that it doesn't confuse it. So see how the future land use has that portion, that's retail, office, residential, and then the remainder is Res 1.
Can you put the photo of the wetland back up too?
I was going to say the same thing. It's something to note that that wetland is going to
Keep
provide
scrolling.
an effective buffer to that
It's going to be
neighborhood
under
from any building that's
natural
going on,
features.
You just put the aerial map up.
any commercial aspect.
And then just take the other layers off. It's because it's going to blank them out.
Yeah, turn that up. There you go.
It's possible to take the shading off.
What do you want off, John?
Just so that we can see the actual extent of the wetland that's covered up.
Oh,
by
to
the
kind of like
yellow
maybe make
shading.
the shading. It's in the transparency.
If you
If you go
just
up-
turn off the wetlands and it'll show up.
If you go up a little bit to where natural features.
It's dizzy watching that.
Yeah.
Is that what you're asking for, John?
Yes.
So the light yellow is the,
Okay, so that extends almost to the very northwest corner of the property, that wetland.
And that wetland requires a 25-foot buffer.
That's correct, per the land development code and the comprehensive plan.
Are you able to show approximately what that 25-foot buffer would work out to be there? I guess that's a 20-acre parcel, so it's probably not a big difference, but you probably have to zoom in.
Well, it looks like the wetland limits extend beyond where the shading is.
I do need to caution you all, though, that GIS is not an official designation of a wetland boundary.
Yes, we understand.
Okay.
This is just kind of a rough idea.
We're trying to make it work, but not working too well.
you have to click and hold it.
Mr. Chairman, if I may be able to help, I know we're trying to do
I
this
think you click it
graphically.
once and you don't hold it. You click it once and then hold it.
Yeah, but see, the mouse is kind of funky here.
One thing that may aid the planning commission and the resident, when we did the change to ROR before, we basically tried to work off of what the wetland boundary was at that time.
Oh, that's kind of sort of.
So
25.
that's how the boundary was created, and even if you look at the
Yeah, it's just that
ROR
when-
map,
See how
you'll
close
see
here,
that
over
it
here,
only
it's, like, really
abuts
jiggly.
one parcel at most.
Right.
So that's how we created it.
All right, and then nonetheless, when you develop,
Right.
the land development code will still require landscape buffers. I think in this case, it'll be a B buffer,
That's right.
Denise, between the commercial and the residential? Notwithstanding wetland buffers?
If I might also, just to answer the question about the notice, so we did a combination comp plan and rezoning notice. And when we do a Euclidean notice, there's a form that some members of staff ask us to use that includes the same language that the chairman read at the beginning of the meeting. And so that's at the bottom of the form. I would tell you after today, I may go back to using my old form one and not including that language and putting it on my letterhead. Because I just found out this week that the form that the county uses has people calling the county only and doesn't have my number on it. And I'd rather that they call me. I just found that out this week. It hasn't come up in other matters. So, but there's nothing technically wrong with the notice, and it's reciting the requirements of Florida law on it. And I don't think we've done anything improper, and I don't think the county's done anything improper. My suspicion here is that the woman speaking, who lives, one of our neighbors, is that she probably misunderstood staff when they said ROR, residential office retail. That's the name of the category, but as you all know, prior to the comp plan change in 2007, there were only two categories, unless you're in a commercial node where commercial could be located. It was ROR and mixed use, and that's why the board picked ROR when the small scale was done many years ago. The only other thing I was going to respond to is Ms. Hazelwood mentioned, having all kinds of special standards and setbacks and all this kind of stuff. That was the specific reason that the board initiated the change to take this out of Northeast Pasco because the board wants to see a good quality commercial use there. My clients own this property, I think since 1957, 52 or 57. We've had commercial on it for many, many years, and honestly, we were waiting for the market to come to this point, and we're hoping that we can get an anchored shopping center instead of just more Dollar General type uses. We could sell probably 4 or 5 parcels right now for unanchored commercial uses. We don't think that's, hopefully we find a better user there that will be more of a credit to the community. But when you've owned something since the 50s, you're not in it for a get-rich-quick scheme. I can assure you that much.
Yeah, I'm sure you'd be willing to spend some extra time to speak to Miss Peggy there.
Oh, well, I'll
if she
speak to her
has
again. We spoke for 30 minutes yesterday.
Oh, okay, all right.
And by the way, I did speak also to the president of the association, and he told me he was really excited to hear that we were doing this, that if it gave us a better chance of getting a quality retailer, he thought that was great.
Okay, good deal. All right.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for that presentation from the county. Very nice job.
Can you drag the map over a little bit so we can see that northwest portion a little bit easier?
Yes.
I'm sorry, it's northwest instead, right? Okay. I was just looking at the portion, you can stay zoomed in, I was just looking at the portion that was abutting the homes there on that northwest corner.
Although I can't tell 100% from an aerial, I would tell you it looks to me that the wetland line actually extends eastward of the yellow shaded area on the map.
I would agree. And then you have a 25-foot buffer there, so.
And then a landscape buffer after that. Okay. All right, then I'll hear a motion to recommendation. For the recommendation.
Move to approve item PC6.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion of the motion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Okay. All right, Denise.
Yep, Denise Hernandez. Next item is item P7. So of course it's at the pleasure of the Planning Commission. If you'd like, I can do a full presentation, or I can read the item into record. To remind you, item P7 is BB 23CU11 for Ace Cheval Inc. It's a conditional use. VBBTS LLC and T-Mobile South LLC for 195-foot above ground level monopole wireless communication facility in an MPUD master plan unit development. So the last time we were here together, and again, I could do a full presentation if you'd like.
Denise, was the entire planning commission that's here today at the last meeting?
The entire planning commission that was here today was at the last meeting, yes.
I was not, but I'm not going to vote, so.
Unless there's
I
a tie.
apologize, you're right.
But there's 5 of us.
Only 5.
But the chairman votes? Yeah.
Yeah, no, you would only vote if there was a tie.
Right.
Okay, but I just wanted to make sure, Denise is asking whether you need a full presentation. You-
I was watching it on TV, so I don't need one.
That would seem to be only be necessary if one of you wasn't here.
Yeah, we
But
were
it sounds
here.
like you were all here.
Okay, but I'm just basically gonna state why we're back over here. So there were several, the applicant provided, and I don't wanna speak for the applicant, of course, but the applicant provided, I can provide some professional information as to property values related to location of communications towers. There was also a question from the Planning Commission regarding whether the person who owned the golf course had some information as to whether the amount of the lease would assist the golf course. And I believe there was one last question, which is if the tower could be located on the county-owned property.
We were not at the time able to get the lease in David's hands. Was David able to read the lease?
I was able to read the lease, and there's probably a difference of opinion between me and the applicant about whether it has a non-compete or not. But to a certain extent, it's irrelevant because Denise contacted the Parks Department and asked them whether they'd be willing to do a lease on the park property. And the answer she got back was
Irrefutably no. Right. They said no.
Now, that was before you didn't give him his park impact fee, so I don't know if he changes. But at the time, his answer was no, that he has no interest in doing a lease for a new tower run. So the county, as a property owner, does not even want to enter into a lease for the park site.
That's correct.
Okay.
So, sounds like no presentation, so we will turn it over to the applicant.
Okay, very good.
Good afternoon, I'm Matanaya John, 935 Main Street, Suite C4, Safety Harbor, Florida 34695. I have taken an oath. I also have with me today, supporting my presentation, Byron Elkins, an RF engineer with T-Mobile South, Noelle Mueller from the Real Estate Department at T-Mobile South, so if you have any questions for her. I have David Talby, a Florida licensed property appraiser. Online, though I may have lost him because he's 9 time zones ahead of us, Bill Place, the owner of a Cheval.
For the record, he is on.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. I think I have everyone from my list.
All right, good.
All right. So, as last time when I came before you, I'm coming before you today for a conditional use approving a 195-foot tall monopole style communication tower upon parcel 2026190030003041. And this is the golf course maintenance facility. Let's see if this will work. It is not. Or maybe it is. Next slide, please. Just again as a refresher, you can see the Plantation Palm, in all maps I show you today, up will be north. You can see the Plantation Palms Country Club on the north central portion of the maps. You can see the Land O'Lakes Recreation Center immediately to the south and west of Plantation Palms. Collier Parkway is the large diagonal road that's running along the western side of the map. Next, please. The yellow arrow again, just to remind you, is the location of the monopole. The purple area is the park's property. This is the property that your staff has confirmed to you that they are not willing to lease. Next. The amber line is high voltage power lines. Again, you heard this last month. Next. And then the gray arrow is the existing flagpole that's being replaced. I will go through the next slides rather quickly. Next, please. These are just closer aerials. Next, please. Next slide, please. Again, just getting closer again. This is an aerial showing that the only tower within 1,500 feet, which is a radius under your code, is the flagpole tower. You saw this last month. Next. This is just your zoning and future land use map. Next. Next. This is the picture of a monopole style communication tower that you saw last month. Monopole is a type of tower that has a single support pole with no external guy wires or ironworks. There are external antennas mounted at the top on a head frame. This is important because it provides the space and air circulation necessary for the top end equipment and antennas that T-Mobile plans to use to be able to function. This is just the compound plan from the record you saw last month. Next. And this is the elevation sheet. Next. I'm going to be showing you revised photo simulations because last time, and I believe it was Commissioner Pontlitz that asked me about alternate designs, but I apologize if it might be Commissioner Poole. I know you guys have moved around a little bit since last time I was here. I had someone over here. But I was asked to show the monopine design. I was also asked about a bell tower, which we feel would be the least compatible design that you could have there. And then I also discussed a shrouded monopole. You asked me to show that information to you, so we have revised our photo simulations. So out of the visible simulations, and again, 2 of my simulations last month you could not see at all. This is the first one off of Sago Point Court. Next, please. Of course, you have your monopole design, and again, you can see those high voltage power lines in the background. You can also see that the trees behind the houses, there's a scrubby buffer back there, are able to provide partial buffering in the range of, from this angle, about half to 2/3 of the monopole. They would be more pronounced if you were closer to those trees, say in the backyards of the houses. The other thing is that the bulk and scale of the monopole scales down to objects in the foreground, such as that lamppost off to the left, and can be completely buffered by objects in the foreground, such as that tree off to the left. Next. This is the shrouded monopole, so essentially it's the same fundamental architecture, except in this case a round shroud is placed around the antenna array. This allows a full antenna array to be provided, but since there's no top and bottom, it allows air to circulate through. So it's kind of a compromise step between the flagpole unipole design that historically was so popular, and I miss dearly for what it's worth, and the full monopole design. Next. This is a bell tower design that was brought up. We submit this would be out of context. This would make sense on a very large, on a church campus or a school campus where you would expect a carillon to exist. Next, please. And then this is the monopine tree, and the monopine camouflage. And I've deployed monopines many times over the course of my 10 years, and I will try not to make your eyes glaze over. I apologize. We just submit that this would be out of context in this particular instance. Next, please. This is Bermuda Bay Court. Next. Monopole. Next. Shrouded monopole, bell tower, and monopine. Next. This is Banyan Hill Lane. Monopole, shrouded monopole, bell tower, and monopine. This is Sim 5. This was from the south. This was still in here when I redid these. Next, please. You saw the RF propagation maps. I will not take you through the pain of discussing capacity and how we fight the same battle that the county does with its roads. As more people move into the state, more people use the state's roads. They also use the cellular networks. I spent some time on that last time, but I do want to show you the 5G band because, and next please. We showed you raw coverage from the 4G band, but the 5G band is the technology that they are moving towards. And also, everywhere the 5G band covers, that's less strain on the 4G band that is currently handling the bulk of the traffic. Next, please. Next. Next. This is Starling data showing population. It's showing density of use. You saw that last month. Next, please. Next, please. That's capacity charting. Next, please. This is 4G band coverage. You would see expansion to the north, but we discussed this last month. Next, please. Next, please. Okay, so this is 5G band, and what we did, just for the sake of comparing apples to apples, was T-Mobile modeled 5G band coverage from a monopole located next to, if you were able to theoretically build a monopole next to the flagpole tower that's down on Parks property. Again, it's been mooted by Parks' position. But one thing I would like to bring your attention to is with this map, you see a horizontal line, and then there's a curved line that extends with straight lines coming down from it. That's the next subdivision north. That horizontal line that you see above the yellow and the green from our marker that has the blue arrow next to it is the limit of plantation palms. And you can see from the Parks property, if that were even an option, the coverage that T-Mobile is trying to establish, that is your next generation coverage that we're moving towards, and we will eventually all be on all the time, and then also is soaking up the majority of the traffic, doesn't even cover all of plantation palms. Next, please. And that's the gap area in the 5G coverage that would exist. I will show you an aerial later showing that there's no places in that area where you'd be able to put a second tower to establish coverage. Next, please. This is the map showing, showing the monopole from the location as presented to you in the record. And you can see that reliable indoor coverage can reach the northern portion of Plantation Palms, and reliable outdoor coverage can reach the subdivision to the north. Next, please. Next, please. This is an aerial showing the area where that gap in 5G service would exist if we were theoretically to the south. That is all the new RF information that I have for you. Do you have any questions for Mr. Elkins with T-Mobile?
I do.
Absolutely. One moment. Let me have him come up. Mr. Elkins, would you please come to the lectern?
Is there any radio frequency reason can two towers be constructed next to each other?
Come on up.
Or within a certain proximity of each other?
I'm sorry, we got to have your name and address, please.
Yes, sorry. My name is Byron Elkins, Senior RF Engineer with T-Mobile. I have been sworn. My address is 5901 Benjamin Center Drive.
Thank you.
Commissioner Moody, if you would please restate your question.
Sure. So is there any technical radio frequency reason? Is there a certain requirement for separation between towers? Can two towers be constructed next to each other, Verizon on one tower, T-Mobile on another tower?
From a frequency standpoint, no, but from an obstruction, yes. So we typically don't build them right beside each other. That's within 10 feet, 50 feet, things like that.
Is there a certain distance where obstruction wouldn't be a problem?
Anything beyond that point would not be an obstruction.
That's all.
Thank you.
Again, I submit that as moot because the county's not willing to actually lease it.
Well,
also,
no, the county parks department isn't willing to lease it. The county parks department is not an elected body and is not autonomous.
understood, but
This is still going to go to the Board of Commissioners. They get to make that decision.
absolutely. But I would ask for a decision based on how this application meets your code.
I understand, and haven't made up my mind yet.
And if I may also bring to your attention, as a general policy, your code, but more importantly, codes in general, discourage what are called tower farms. So placing multiple towers very close together. There's examples of those in, say, Atlanta when you're going
It
along.
wouldn't be my preferred case either. I mean, we have an ordinance that requires co-location, and in this case, you've told us it's impossible to co-locate, and the owner of the tower is unwilling to make the accommodations so that you can co-locate. And I would tell you that I don't know what the outcome of this particular case is, but in the future, we need to look at what we can do about that ordinance to make sure we get the co-location that we desire.
All right, please continue. Go ahead.
All right. Next, please. This is, again, just a diagram showing why the flagpole design towers don't work. You saw this last month. Next, please. Plantation Palms, HOA obviously provided support. You have an email that was in the record from September 2021 from the president of Plantation Palms, stating that the Master Association is supportive. You also now have a sworn affidavit from Mr. Hammond, who is the president who sent that email, also attesting that the HOA is supportive. The HOA is supportive of the project. I can read that to you. It's also in your record.
Okay, thank you.
Next, I'd like to talk about property value, and here's the affidavit of Mr. Hammond. Next, I'd like to talk about property value. You have in your record a property value study letter. I have paper copies if you would like to have a copy in your hands as Mr. Talby comes up and talks to you and gives you a brief.
Can I just clarify one thing, Denise? Some of what is being stated in the record, I'm not actually seeing.
Yes, that's accurate. So let me clarify, Denise Hernandez. These items came in after the agenda closed, so they're not in your record. So if you could move to receive and file these items.
Well, I think we need somebody to pass them out.
I will try to get copies of all these things.
Move to receive and file.
Second.
All right. Motion to receive and file in a second. Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Property value study letter. I also am providing the affidavit of Mr. Hammond. And then if you need a paper copy of the revised RF maps.
Anything you showed on the PowerPoint is gonna be part of the record. I was more concerned that you were referring to things that we didn't have in your PowerPoint or in our online version. That's my concern.
Absolutely, sir. At this time, I'd like to bring up Mr. Talby so he can just discuss his property value study letter. Mr. Talby, please state your name and address for the record.
David Talby, Taulbee, 609 East Jackson Street, Tampa 33602. Good afternoon. I've been sworn. What you have before you is a compilation of many years, probably 10 plus years, of research and analysis and data that I've compiled with respect to property valuations, mostly residential valuations that are proximate cellular communication towers. I have studied this issue for about 25 years. I take it very seriously. I've studied bell towers, I've studied stealth towers, such as pine trees, and I've studied monopole towers. I've studied towers that's at issue today. So I can tell you that there is not any market data, there is no market data from multiple counties throughout West Central Florida, Central Florida, that indicate this tower is going to have any negative impact on property values. There is no data to support it. Anecdotally, you may hear that it will, but there is no specific data. In your report there, that compilation, you can see I've got multiple examples where I've talked to owners, brokers, realtors, that these towers have had no impact on a transaction. And I also supplement my study with conversations with property appraisers throughout West Central Florida, to include two of your own appraisers, Dan Villa and Chris Poe, who have never made a reduction or even an increase in a property assessment because of proximity to a cell tower. And you ask yourself, well, how can that be? Well, they do the same research I do. It's based on market data and sales. There's no indication that this tower is going to have any impact whatsoever on property values.
All right.
Can I ask you a question?
You may, yes, sir.
So the affidavit from Mr. Hammond, I don't think Mr. Hammond's an expert, but he speculates that if the golf course were to close, that it would decrease property values in the neighborhood. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do not.
Okay.
With regards to property appraisers, do property appraisers take into account in your experience any other features like high tension power lines or other features?
They do. Your own appraiser, Dan Villa, made a reduction, I think, for a property that was adjoining or near a sewer treatment plant.
Okay.
So they do. Power lines, not so much, but other intrusive things like sewer treatment plants, sure.
Okay.
All right. I think that's what we were talking about when we said substantial competent evidence earlier. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And if I may just ask a couple of questions for the record. Mr. Talby, is your resume included with your report?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you licensed as a property appraiser in the state of Florida?
Yes, I'm a certified general appraiser, correct.
And has your analysis included in your report been based upon generally accepted best practices for property appraisers in the state of Florida, as you understand your profession?
Not only my state of Florida, but the profession in general, yes.
Thank you, sir.
Can I ask you one more question? I asked this question at the last meeting, but you're probably going to say I don't know, but has there anybody ever done a study about whether poor cell service can decrease property values?
Interesting question. I had a hearing in Hernando County 2 months ago like this, and one of the commissioners, first time I ever heard this, chose not to purchase a house because he did not have quality self-service in the house.
So, but you're not aware of anybody saying like an actual study?
I think it could be a personal preference issue, but personally I find that more and more homes are using more and more devices and so forth. They want connectivity.
Okay, but specific question is, are you aware of anybody that studied that particular issue?
I have not really studied that issue. I've been more solely focused on what impacts a tower would have negatively on a property value.
Well, at some point, you might want to do a study on the converse, which is what happens to property values if you don't have cell service. Might help you in a future case. I'm just pointing it out.
No, that's a very valid point. It would be, it'd be very time-consuming, but realtor-based interviews. I think, yeah, we'll look into that. Thank you.
For what it's worth, anecdotally, it's happened to me once personally on a house I was buying and had poor service. That being said, there's been some improvements in calling over Wi-Fi and things like that. So if you have Wi-Fi service within your house, now you can use your phone to call over Wi-Fi. So that's becoming, with technology improvements, becoming potentially less of an issue, but that did happen to me once.
Interesting.
I don't know that I've ever selected a property, but I've selected a cell phone company that can make sure I have service
Also
located
true.
at my home and at my office.
That's actually what ended up happening with me.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Okay, we're not gonna take a poll of who has what cell phone.
I didn't mention which company, okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would also posit that, back when I started 10 years ago, there were still landlines. They were still a thing. We're also still using flagpoles. So as you know, studies tend to lag behind a bit. So as we've moved to where almost all houses, the vast majority of houses have cut the cord, the studies are yet to come just because lag in data and lag in taking time to do stuff. Like
Just refresh me one bit on the flagpole.
Yes, sir.
I understand the air circulation issue. Will the antennas themselves fit within the shroud surrounding the pole?
No, sir.
They won't, okay.
All right. Finally, if we have Mr. Place on the phone, I'd just like him to be available. He has provided a letter that
That is also not in our record.
not in your record, so I will bring that to you.
You hasten to add.
Need a motion to receive and file?
Yes,
Second.
please. Have a motion and a second. Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll give you a quick read of it, and then I'll make I will make Mr. Place available for questions, assuming I do not lose him with the time shift.
Yeah, 9 time zones away, huh?
Yes, sir.
Must be in India or someplace like that.
See into the
Germany.
future, he's pretty good.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Place's letter is addressed to the county in the form of to whom it may concern. And he states, my wife and I own the Plantation Palms Golf Club. The club was closed for 2 years when we purchased it in 2016. Please support the location of a cell tower on our Plantation Palms Golf Club maintenance facility. The tower revenue will support the greater need of the community for cellular service or cell service and the continued operation of the golf club and growth of the property values. Plantation Palms Golf Club failed in 2014 and its doors closed abruptly when the owners could no longer afford the maintenance costs of the 154-acre course. For 2 years, the property sat idle and overgrown. Property values plummeted when the whole Plantation Palms subdivision of over 800 homes. By late 2015, the Plantation Palms HOA recruited our company, Ace Golf, to purchase and renovate the closed golf club rather than to have it developed as homes as the developer proposed. To entice Ace and to subsidize the huge renovation costs, the community pledged purchase of social memberships for every one of our 820 plus households in the Plantation Palms for 5 years to bring back their club and property values. The investment provided $125,000 a year subsidy to help with the multi-million-dollar renovation and restoration of the golf club. By fall 2016, Ace Golf reopened and the club to this day continues renovations. With the reopening and renewed health of the golf club, property values have been restored and grown even higher in the surrounding communities. Early estimates of $2.5 million for the restoration provided to be inadequate. Damage from 2 years of closure and neglect resulted in the need of replacement of all 18 greens AC systems, irrigation pumps, most drainage pipes, and fixing just about every square foot of the course and clubhouse. Over $3 million have been invested in Plantation Palms Golf Club so far, and deferred maintenance still remains that will take at least the next five years and hundreds of thousands of dollars to repay. The Community Golf Club subsidy investment ended in 2020, but repair and renovation continues with more drainage work, turf improvement, roof replacement, irrigation system restoration, bunker repair work. The investment needs are still much higher than the typical due to 2 years of closure and are over and above the typical operating expenses of a golf course. Plantation Palms community knows what it's like to lose their golf course and see the property values plummet. They're also very aware of the high cost of restoration. Since Ace Golf reopened the club, the HOA and community continues to be cooperative and supportive of the club as they do not wish it to fail again. When the opportunity to gain some recurring revenue by hosting a cell tower presented itself, we enthusiastically supported the proposal, especially since it could be located in a remote area near our maintenance barn. We also found the HOA and many residents to support the cell tower proposal for the simple reason that they will all benefit from a healthy, successful golf club. Please support the cell tower proposal on golf club property to help ensure continued operation of the golf club. Rental income will go towards maintenance and improvement of the golf course. This in turn will benefit the continued growth in the property values and public recreation. That is Mr. Place's letter. Mr. Place, do we have you online? I was worried we may have lost him.
He's still showing on, okay. Mr. Place, would you provide your name and address for the record, please?
William Place, 610 Garrison Cove Lane, Tampa, Florida, 02.
Have you been sworn, Mr. Place?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
Mr. Place, I just read your letter dated, your notarized letter dated April 25th, 2023 to the commission. Were you able to hear me read it?
Yes, I did hear it.
Is that the letter you wrote?
Yes, it is.
All right. Do you have any additional remarks on the letter?
No, not really, not unless there's any questions, anything I can assist with.
Do the commissioners have any questions for Mr. Place?
Any questions from the guys? Nope.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Place.
Thank you.
Commissioners, I can run you through the conditional use factors if you would like, but I also specifically incorporate into my presentation by reference the conditional use factors that were in my cover letter and also in your expert staff's report. Would you like me to talk you through them?
Does anybody wish to hear that again? No.
Okay.
No, necessary.
So with that, I'll reserve it any remaining time for rebuttal. That concludes my direct presentation. I and my witnesses are available for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so is there anyone here to object or have questions? Come forward, please. We could just have your name and your address, please.
Sure. It's Tom and Don LaFreri, and we're on 3112 Sago Point Court, Plantation Palms. We're on the 11th fairway of the golf course. And,
okay, and you've been sworn, both of you?
Yes, we've been sworn, yeah. So first of all, we just want to say we have no intentions of halting progress, or we're not anti-Ace Golf. We know Bill Place. We were there when the golf course was went into foreclosure, and he was purchasing it. Sounds like some things have happened. When we were here last week, there was some issues with where the flagpole is. Could it be moved? So it sounds like there's been some movement on that, which is good. So we didn't know until we just heard that. So that's great that that's moving forward. We heard that it was not going to be allowed, and then you had mentioned that there's still a possibility that it can be moved. So that's great. I just want to talk a little bit about the valuation. I've been a realtor for 30 years, so I know something like this has a detriment to value, but not only that, last time I was here, I didn't provide it, but I have at least 3 or 4 articles from the National Association of Realtors from different places, one from Alabama, one from Georgia, and one from Australia, all saying that that it's anywhere from 4 to 10% reduction in property values as you get closer to a tower like this. And it's within 2,000 feet. After 2,000 feet, it doesn't really have an effect, but within 2,000 feet, it does. And there's all kinds of technical data in here. I don't know why the appraiser couldn't provide any technical data. He actually didn't provide any data, really. He used his opinion. So we actually have real data here. And so when we read this data, so we're not pros at this by any means. We've been learning this over the last couple of months. Okay, even though being a realtor, I kind of know some of these things, but we didn't know anything about cell tower data. So the data that we've been reading says you need to use this, and I don't know if the appraiser would understand this or know this. It's called the spatial hedonic property valuation model. So they said that's what you have to use when you do this. I have no idea what it is, but it's scientific. So and that's what they used, and they showed this. So I'm not going to really discuss the value. That can go here or there, but that's one of our reasons. We're within 500 feet of this tower where our home is. We're actually about 510 feet from the actual tower. As far as the golf course, so you had seen that we contributed $125,000 a year, towards the golf course. So that was what, $650,000 to help promote them, and that was great. And I think if something would have happened, we would do that again. But I want to show you here something which I didn't know Bill was going to be here, but we have our newsletter from the association. This is put out by Jim Hammond, and it's actually signed by Bill Place. It says Ace Golf Reports record year. And I can provide this, but if you don't mind, I can just read a few paragraphs of it.
Let me just say that your time is up, but you have twice as much time because there's 2 of you. So go ahead.
Oh, good. Thank you.
But
So-
don't you come up and.
I'll try.
He's going to hog all your time. That's the problem.
We're pretty close. We're pretty close. So Bill Place wrote this, and he said, "Thank you for making 2022 the best ever at Plantation Palms Golf Club. First, thank you so much for those who voted Plantation Palms as best golf course in Tampa Bay Times Reader Poll for the 3rd year in a row. Our other golf course, Crescent Oaks, was voted #1 and Plantation Palms #2. It has been a 6-year journey made possible by you, the HOA, and residents of Plantation Palms who invested in the club and who continue to show support, membership, golf rounds, price per round, and reached the highest levels ever, leading to our most profitable year after the first 3 to 4 years of losses and investment. Other key successes are Mulligan's, which is our restaurant and clubhouse, and the event facility revenue alone grew double digits to nearly $2 million, more than the club's total revenue, including golf, under the past ownership. Our events business exceeded that of our sister club, Crescent Oaks, for the first time, as well as all other key measures, including golf rounds, revenue per round, and profitability." So, again, I mean, if it has to go there, yeah, we would like to see them get the money. But if there's other, I think it was just kind of a slam dunk. I think they didn't really look into other locations. I mean, I don't know, but if it has to go there, that's fine. We would like to see something that could have some concealment, but they're not in trouble, and if they were in trouble, we would bail them out again. So I don't want you to think that it's to make your decision just based on the golf course success. As far as the HOA goes, we weren't aware of any vote. We've been there for 20 years. So I don't know where that vote went, how that worked, but I know, I can't believe there's not more people there upset. Actually, this is going to be on the south side of the course, so there's not that many homes that are going to really be affected on it. It's going to be our street and a couple others that you showed there. So maybe there's only about 70 houses or so that are going to see this. So I can kind of see Jim Hammond saying this is a good spot. And we know Jim. We actually had dinner with Jim Hammond, the president, that Tuesday night. And I'm a member of the golf course. I'm golfing tomorrow. So it's like, we want this. But I know if you put this in Jim Hammond's backyard, he would say no. So, you know, it's, so that's pretty much all we have to say.
Well, I do appreciate, I know you mentioned last time we were here thinking outside of the box, you know, and not just sticking this ugly pole in someone's backyard. And I appreciate that it looks like some effort was put in there to look into doing, you know, a bell tower or one of the tree type facilities. You know, as far as the bell tower not fitting in, the whole area is kind of covered by trees, so it's not like we're going to be looking out there and go, there's not a church that's attached to it, it's attached to a, you know, a golf facility. We don't really see that. All we would see is the tower. I do have pictures of our backyard, if any of you guys would want to see that, and what this tower would look like. If it was concealed, it would certainly just show that they appreciate the values of the homeowners and doing their due diligence to not, you know, because we're not going to be the last ones this is going to happen to. This is just starting. You don't see this close to homes in Pasco, but as it grows, we are going to see more of it. So, you know, we need to figure out with the, you know, cell tower companies, how do we make these so that they're not looking awful and diminishing, you know, value and comfort of people's homes when they're looking at these massive monsters under their back window.
And if any of you golf, 500 feet from our house is about a 5-iron shot. So if you're shooting a 5-iron, that's about how close the tower is.
So, is there any way we could put the photo simulations back up? Because I want to be clear about what their preference is in the tower appearance. It doesn't mean planning commission has to agree with it. I just wanted to hear what their preference is in terms of the tower appearance.
While they're bringing that up, do you have an idea of when the power lines were constructed?
Just like a year ago.
Yeah. And those are just after tree lines, so probably in another year we won't see those, but this tower is going to be far above that.
Denise, I think there was another view that shows it a little clearer.
I think
Yeah,
there's
that
one
one.
on,
Yeah,
their,
that one.
on their block too. I think there's one on Sago Palm.
Okay, so
There you go.
Yeah, so where that tower is, we're actually 2 houses to the left. We've got a 2-story house. It's worth about $650,000. So if valuations are 5 or 10%, you know, it's fairly substantial to us. I mean, I know they're going to disagree.
okay, so I had a very specific question for you though,
Oh.
that I need you to answer. Denise, if you could scroll through these slides and then stop me on the slide where you said that it's the one, I realize you don't like any of them.
Okay.
But I want to know which of those you dislike the least. How about that?
Okay. I think the tree is probably the better one.
I kind of like the tower, so it looks like a bell tower or something like that.
That's just us. We're just 2
No,
people.
if it were, you know, along a business and you're looking, just seeing that tower, you'd say it looks out of place, but from there, you can't see what it's attached to. My thought on the tree thing is it might look good for a short time, but then who's going to maintain it? 10 years from now, after a couple hurricanes, you got like 3 branches sticking out. That could be a problem.
Yeah, that is a problem.
But bottom line, if Bill were here, of course, revenue, sure. Who wouldn't want more revenue? You know, I was a landlord. Of course, if the tenant was going to pay me an extra $1,000 a month, of course I want it. But does he need it? And can this be moved? That's really the question. And if it can't
If
be,
it can't be moved, then yeah, just to consider homeowners, you know, what they're looking at, because this is going to be something that's going to, I'm sure, be coming up in lots of different communities as these cell towers grow. We've seen 2 or 3 pop up just within a mile of us over this last year.
Have you been provided with Mr. Talby's study that was just handed to us to the question of evaluation?
No.
Okay. Yeah, not that we had the opportunity to really study this either, but it looks like there's quite extensive data on.
Okay, good.
So,
No, I didn't realize.
Yeah,
Okay.
there is, and it's based on 25 years of his experience. So it's quite a detailed report.
Okay, that's great.
But, you know, and to comment on that, you know, for a bank to say, well, the house is worth less because of this, but for a homeowner, if I were driving with my children up to home, 2 homes.
Better said.
One had that behind it and one didn't, I'm going to pick the other one, which is going to diminish the value of the home with it because you have less buyers, less competition.
Well, you have to keep in mind too that appraisers render an opinion of value based on their experience, and so it's still just an opinion.
It's an
but
opinion.
At the same time, it's also supposed to be an impartial opinion. that's not benefiting towards the homeowner or to the bank or to anybody else.
Right, that's why we have these here, which obviously show a diminished value.
Right.
So, who's correct?
Yeah, well, one of the biggest things we're considering is the potential loss of the golf course, you know, because I do have experience with the cost of running a golf course, and it's substantial. And you can see that there's golf courses closing all over the place.
Right.
So, you know, I can appreciate the fact that every little bit of money that they can gather to keep it running. No, I don't know anybody that's getting rich off running a golf course, but you know, I think it's important. If I were living there, it'd be more important to me that we keep the golf course. I'll put up with the tower rather than lose the golf course.
I agree, but I don't think that's an issue. I'm golfing there tomorrow. It's hard to get tee times. It's packed. He's
Yeah.
doing a great job.
And there is other revenue they have.
Parks Department needs money too.
What's that?
So the Parks Department needs money too.
Oh, yeah.
Well, only after the last planning commission meeting.
We were actually on the committee. It's called the BBOC. It was Bring Back Our Course. We were on that committee. We went grassroots. We went house to house, and we had people sign up to pay that $125,000 a year. You know,
That's good.
We
That was-
wanted that.
that was
I mean, I'm
smart.
golfing there tomorrow. I'm a member. We're social members.
Well, and it may not be an issue now, they may not be in trouble now, but we don't know what this new economic cycle is
No,
going
it's
to
true.
bring too. And
That's true. No.
again, it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Yeah, it's just if it's gonna affect our value, you know, if
course.
we're just, you know, it's like a David and Goliath thing here. It's like they've got a board of professionals. It's just us, but.
I think, as you said, that, you know, these towers are going to become more and more prevalent, especially with 5G. From the presentation we had, 5G covers a smaller distance, so the towers are going to have to become more dense from what they are currently.
We're reading
anyway.
about, she's reading about in California where they're actually gonna put them on people's houses, which would actually be better. Be like a little dish.
But ultimately, that's going to become more ubiquitous in the area, and so therefore, the more towers that start to proliferate in the area, the more likely it's going to affect property values less, because they'll be in more people's backyards.
Yeah, hopefully.
So, since you all had a difference of opinion about which one you like best, I'm just trying to figure out, I mean, are you okay with, if that went to a vote of the HOA and let them decide which?
Yeah, I would say that. I'd say.
Remember, always defer to the wife.
Yeah, sorry?
Always defer to the wife.
Some of the homeowners can't be here either. We have a lot of elderly, and then, you know, a few of our neighbors here were working, so they sort of like, you guys go, do what you can do for us. So, you know, we could also come get a few neighbors to say, give their opinions.
Well, I mean, the HOA might be the best place to turn to for that decision if you all aren't in agreement, so.
Yeah, we know Jim Hammond very well. He's an honest guy, so if you ask him to put out a little survey.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Could we?
Thank you very much.
If we were inclined to approve, could we approve it with that condition that the final design is based upon a survey from?
Well, I do need to ask the applicant, and I need to get the applicant to confirm they could build any one of those four, and it won't affect their service, but we need to confirm that with the applicant. But assuming that's true, yes, I think you could do that as a condition.
Okay.
But I like this guy's thought. I'd say, let's see what the county says first. Let's give the county the revenue.
He likes you. Likes you, John. That's
All right.
John Moody down there.
All right, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. I think we've had a fair airing of the concerns.
Can I ask the applicant a couple questions?
Absolutely. She's gonna come back up anyway, so.
So.
Matt
my
Tonight,
first-
John again for the record.
So my first question is, the four tower designs that you show up there, can you build any one of the four and still meet your service goals?
Technically, yes, we would. We provided the bell tower design for reference only, though, the three-legged bell tower design.
The one in the picture.
So I guess my question is, if the HOA came back and said, that's the one we love, could you build that and still meet your service needs?
Yes.
Okay.
That's pretty direct.
Okay, so then I have another question for your RF engineer, which is, you showed us, if you could go back to those RF maps that you showed us,
Two eyes and a mouth.
where you compared the service, the 5G service at the park site versus the golf course site?
There will be forwards to that. And it is actually the next section, so please proceed forwards. Please proceed forwards.
Yeah, we're trying as best as we can.
Understood.
There's a lag between what we see here and what you see.
We are just finally getting our
Okay, so
computers reworked.
I think what, I'm just going to summarize what I think you said here, but if I say it wrong, correct me.
Yes, sir.
I think what you're saying is that if you located the tower on the park site or in the general location where the flagpole is, that you would have a gap in service to that circled area.
That's correct.
State your name again.
And that if you put it on the golf course site, you don't have that same gap in service. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes. Byron Elkins, our engineer. Yes, that is correct. Those models predict that the 5G signal will not meet our service levels in that community unless we move the site forward and north.
Okay. And I guess I'll ask the applicant, I mean, how do you think the Telecommunications Act, what's the interplay there? I mean, if you're telling us you have a gap in service, if we don't approve this, how does the Telecommunications Act play into that?
Yeah, so can we proceed forwards, Matt and I, John again, proceed forwards to the aerial slide. So I'm actually litigating an effective prohibition case right now against the city of Lakeland, of all places. And basically, effective prohibition is a two-prong analysis that involves, do you have a gap in service? Is it significant? And here you have a pretty large number of houses. And then the other analysis is, are there reasonable alternatives? And when you look at this coverage area, it is all single-family homes. It is worse to try to put a tower on the north side of Plantation Palms than it is on the south side. Now, your usual appellate scheme that you're used to under state law is called a writ of certiorari, where the state court just asks, did you follow your process? Did you provide notice? Did you take and depart from the essential requirements of the law in a way that, constitutes a miscarriage of justice? And was there competent, substantial evidence? With effective prohibition claim, that is something called de novo. I get to go to federal court. I get to argue to a federal judge that I have a gap here. I get to bring Byron back in and have him testify and provide additional reports. And then I get to have the judge make a decision as to whether there's a gap there or not, and whether this created a gap. So I believe there would be a gap. If you'd like to hear from Mr. Elkins whether the gap is significant to him as an RF engineer, I'll be happy to have him say that. But I don't have to make all my record here because I can make it during the lawsuit. And I apologize to you, that's not
within
my
this
intent.
oval is the gap.
Would that come?
I'm sorry, that's a question.
Within this oval, that's the gap in service. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the previous slide showed where our prediction models say that the reliable coverage will end. So everything in yellow is considered reliable indoor residential coverage.
So please back up one more slide, just so we can keep things straight, and I'm sorry for talking over. All right, I am now showing the map of the coverage from the parks location. So if this was kept at parks, this is the coverage you would be seeing. It's the map labeled A2G0422C. Mr. Elkins, please let's speak to this particular map.
So this map is depicting in yellow reliable indoor residential coverage from our 5G radio system.
And what's the green?
The green is reliable in vehicle because the attenuation of a vehicle is higher than the construction of a house. So those levels have to be stronger outside of a vehicle in order to provide reliable coverage inside that vehicle.
Okay.
So that's kind of a measurement stick that we use in the industry. We also have one for in-building commercial. Those are our 3 levels that we always design to.
So you're saying that even if the tower on which you're currently located could accommodate you, that you'd still be here asking for this request?
Yes, sir. Matt and I, John again. Yes, Commissioner Moody.
And sir, I just wanted to confirm, so my limited knowledge of how wireless works, I understand that as technology progresses and bandwidth increases, which is the natural progression of technology, as that happens, the distance that you can reliably transmit from that tower is proportionally decreasing.
That's a pretty good understanding of it, yes. As the channel bandwidth widens, which we have to do in order to offer faster speeds, broadband quality cellular service, that power is reduced because the spectrum is increasing.
Okay, so as everybody tends to move to that new technology, then it's going to continue to require...
The power is the same, but we spread that power over more bandwidth,
right.
We lose range.
Okay. Thank you.
Could we go forward to that aerial of that same gap area? Okay.
So I'm one to relish a fight for what it's worth, but I think trying to place a tower up there would be an unnecessary fight to be visited upon those property owners, especially when we can be down near high voltage power lines on the other side of a golf course, providing more than 2 times tower height separation, which is the presumed separation, is the separation your own code presumes as allowable for a type 2 presumed administrative approval. We could get into, we don't qualify for type 2 because of our height, but one of the standards in there in your code, and I can cite to it if you want, is that you provide 2 times tower height. So when you look at this, you have all those factors of your code lining up, and your separation is located, that I was just talking about, is in code section 1002.6, tier 2, sub D, sub 1. Anyways, that's where that separation is. But if you were to compare these two, you couldn't establish any of that up here. You would have a tower that's much worse placed. Much more.
Yeah, and visually, it goes well beyond Plantation Palms. There's, Sable Palms is up there and other neighborhoods up in that area too. So, you're servicing you're focusing on Plantation Palms, but you're serving a larger node, I guess you could say, up through that area. That was kind of my point with that.
Yes, sir.
Visually going to the north there's really nowhere for you to go to the north.
Yes, sir. Could not have said it better myself.
Really no available land, just visually looking at it.
Is it safe to assume that AT&T and Verizon would have the same coverage limitations? I don't know, I'm asking.
Byron, no, because I can't speak for their coverage requirements. They use slightly different channels and technology to us as well. So it's hard, can't answer how they would fare in the same situation.
If I may, though, since I've brought Verizon applications and AT&T applications, I'm not an RF engineer myself. I just grew up in a radio station and have brought about 200 applications. They face the same fundamental dynamic that the further south you go, the less they can cover to the north. And their coverage is still inherently local, as in it serves the surrounding communities.
Are they on the existing flagpole tower now?
Verizon is currently on the existing flagpole tower.
If you build this tower, does the flagpole become functionally obsolete? Would there still be need for service there, or is Verizon going to jump up and relook? Just speculating. What would happen to that?
Yeah, just my speculation from dealing with densification, which is what we call concurrency.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that Verizon would leave and move to the monopole because they can't deploy their 5G antennas. They require airflow too.
And so are you saying that the flagpole cannot be modified to accommodate your antennas?
So T-Mobile...
Can we take the shroud off the flagpole?
Well, the shroud on there is part of the zoning approval. So...
Well, That's what we're here to do, so.
But you can't change that approval, it's not before you. But even if it could be modified, we've already shown you a model for this monopole comparing apples to apples between the golf course maintenance site and the flagpole site. And the signal simply doesn't make it up there. It's a question of physics. So that wasn't an apples to oranges comparison where I was showing flagpole versus monopole. We modeled monopole versus monopole.
And you're not going to create any coverage gaps to the south by going further north?
No, sir. To the south are swamps and agricultural lands. So.
All right, are there any other questions? All right, any other thing you want to add?
For the record, Vertical Bridge is amenable to the Planning Commission's contemplated condition of approval of requiring a survey to be sent out to select a design, if approved. And I would also just remind you, some of the LaFerie's remarks, well, first I would remind you that when you're looking at competent substantial evidence, you have articles that are in general positing ideas, but then you have case studies from the market. And I would submit to you that case studies do rise to competent substantial evidence. An article is just more opinion. If you have questions for Mr. Talby, I can bring him back up for his thoughts on that. The other thing I would bring to your attention is that the LaFere, and I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing names, especially with a name like Matanaya. But our neighbors literally said, you know, Mr. Hammond wouldn't like it in his backyard. And I believe they made a similar remark in a golden rule manner. But not in my backyard is not competent substantial evidence in the state of Florida. And you cannot base your, I would respectfully submit, subject to counter from Counsel Goldstein, of course, that you cannot base your decision on that sentiment. And I would respectfully submit that.
We understand that. We actually spoke about that on the last case, the same sentiment. So.
Understood. I just didn't have, it's not my record, so I had to state the obvious. My father has a joke about making a record, and it ends with, the guy was like dead. The coroner had his brain in his hand or whatnot, and he was trying to run that to ground. And the coroner finally says, well, I guess he could be alive and practicing law in Tennessee. He was making fun of him because the person he was trying to ferret out literally did not, the corpse did not have a brain in his body. So sometimes we state weird things that might make your eyes glaze over, and I apologize for that.
Understood.
All right. I and my team stand for any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
I know we as commission have to make a lot of difficult decisions on a lot of things, and there never really is any one right answer. But we have to weigh what's legal and what's set forward with precedent and law, and so we have to look at these things in order to think about the greater good. I'm a property owner too. I understand no property owner wants to have anything that's slightly in their backyard, power lines, whatever it might be. But at the same time, the world's changing, technology's changing every minute. And there are ramifications to the other side of it as well. If we don't have this technology, if we didn't have these power lines, we wouldn't have power conveniences that we enjoy today. So I'll make a motion that we approve this with the conditions set forth to conduct a survey of the property owners to determine the best potential design for the construction of the tower.
Survey of the HOA, right?
Survey of the HOA. Yes.
Right. Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it because that condition is going to be in there. I think that's extremely important that the HOA is engaged regarding that issue.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion of the motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, can I please have clarification of the motion? Because as I understand it is, what you want the applicant to do is to bring forth the 4 different designs that you've seen here, which are basically a monopole, a shrouded monopole, a bell tower, and a monopine design to the HOA for their vote.
That's correct, and specifically to survey the residents. The HOA can't vote on it as a board, we want them to survey the residents.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second.
I guess the corollary of that is that they then build the design that the majority of the residents want.
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
And do the residents have we're talking about 4, but maybe the residents will come up with their own idea of what it ought to look like, or improvements. I
Well,
would tell you that my envisionment of a bell tower wouldn't exactly be what was presented up on the screen today, but
You have to be careful with that, though, because I asked the applicant, could they build any of those 4 without affecting service? I don't know if the residents are gonna come up with, if they come up with a 5th idea, I don't know if it would affect service or not.
more specifically, what I'm getting at, the bell tower had 3 legs and depicted a cross. There's not a church there, but maybe there's something that could maybe fit a little bit better with the neighborhood.
A golf ball?
Well, that may be too. Maybe a giant golf ball. You know, Clystron 9 is a giant golf ball.
We're getting awfully creative up here, you know.
That was David's suggestion. The radars are golf balls.
Okay, so.
I think it needs to be limited to the 4 designs that were presented without any substantial, so as long as it's simply, I can amend it to say that it's one of those 4 designs as presented with only, I'm trying to think of the word.
How about minor design changes accepted by the applicant?
Right, there you go.
If the applicant's willing to make
Even
additional.
better than that.
Okay.
Okay, so we can accept the modification of the motion, then, David?
Yes.
And I will
Okay.
second that motion again.
We have a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Okay, motion carries. So you don't have to go to federal court now, see?
Thank you for your time.
That being said, if the commissioners are listening, study your ordinance, Mr. County Attorney, because I will tell you this, I'm going to come back and I'm not going to be threatened that we'll take you to federal court if we don't approve your cell phone tower. And this is supposed to be a better technology, but yet I'm being told, well, now I need to have more of these antennas everywhere for this, quote, better technology.
See, and they used to like you.
Well, I don't care if they like me.
Well, the ordinances do need to be updated as technology changes. Because there are physical limitations to.
Okay, Miss Denise, where are we?
The last item is AP9. It's on your addendum agenda.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. Tammy Snyder, Planning and Development.
Hey, Tammy.
Happy May the 4th be with you.
It's my dog's birthday.
That's right.
I always want to stay also with you, like the Catholic Church.
There you go. You're right with me, yeah.
All right. I have for you today the Nest Hockey Academy, MPUD, PDD 237624. Here is their location map. That's kind of a close view, so I made another one for you. The subject parcel is up at the top in the light blue color. We have the I-75 on the west, Overpass Road up into Elam Road on the south. Proposed is a rezoning request from an AC agricultural zoning district to an MPUD master planned unit development district to allow the development of a hockey academy with a maximum of 150 students and associated infrastructure. The Henderson Ice Rink was approved under a special exception designation to allow the use, but it did cap the student and employee population until such time as the property is rezoned to the requested MPUD to allow a hockey academy with the associated activities and the infrastructure.
The applicant is also seeking the following variation from the Land Development Code. Section 402.5D requires a 1,000-foot distance between a school, place of worship, or a park for alcohol consumption and sales. And as this academy expects to host tournaments and other such sporting functions where alcohol may possibly be served, the applicant wishes a waiver from this requirement. The PDD has no concerns recommending approval of this distance waiver for this MPUD. The waiver is for the distance requirement only. If alcohol sale or consumption is to occur on the site, the applicant must still obtain the administrative use permit per section 402.5.d. This MPUD is within the business core of Connected City, and the Connected City Comp Plan requires a true mix of uses within walkable distances, and that could be hindered by a distance requirement such as that. So as such, the MPUDs within Connected City are typically granted this particular distance waiver. Additionally, the unique nature of this site is likely to promote tourism by hosting events that may benefit from or require the availability of alcohol either at or near the site. And here's their master plan, and we have a Vision Road running along the west there, going diagonally. The surrounding area is in transition via existing development approvals. We have the Murata Connected City MPUD, Epperson Ranch CCMPUD, Aprilli CCMPUD, Ellis CCMPUD, as planned pursuant to the Connected City overlay. Vision Road AF bisects the property, and the applicant is required to dedicate the right-of-way for it and to connect to it once it is constructed and open to the public. And that roadway AF, also known as Boyett Road, once constructed, will contain at least one multi-use path within its right-of-way per the Connected City Master Roadway Plan. The applicant will improve McKendree Road from the project entrance north towards Tyndall Road. The proposed request is consistent with the Pasco County LDC Chapter 400, subsection 402.2 zoning amendment, MPUD, and with the applicable provisions of the Pasco County Comprehensive Plan. And with that, the PDD recommends approval with conditions.
All right, thank you.
Tammy, do you have a map of the road network? I mean, because your MPD plan shows like a tiny piece of the Vision Road, and I'm not sure it gives the planning commission a good feel of where McKendree goes and where the Vision Road goes.
I do not have one of those in my presentation. I apologize.
Maybe
it's on the map, right?
Full Pasco mapper.
Yeah, we'll work on bringing it up for you.
Okay.
Do we have anything that shows all of these other approved Connected City MPUDs in relation to this
Mapper can show, we can pull up the MPUD layer.
That'd be helpful.
Yeah.
So Tammy, while that's being brought up, so McKendree is going to be improved north to
Correct, up
Tyndall?
to Tyndall Road, yes,
Okay.
from the project entrance.
But not south, so north. So the expected traffic coming from the north to the...
Correct.
Okay.
But part of the reason for that, Mr. Poole, is that the county's long-term vision for this area is the Vision Road, not McKendree
Right,
Road.
correct.
That's why I wanted to see a map so you can see why that is. So I prefer if you zoomed out a little bit, but basically this Vision Road connects from the new overpass interchange area. It goes up through this area and then eventually connects into Pasco Town Center, which I don't know. you all remember when you approved it, but it's a pretty significant
Yes.
project at the southeast corner of the interstate in State Route 52.
That's why I asked if we could see a map that shows those.
So this is a good map because it shows you why McKendree is sort of almost a temporary road in the long-term vision of this area. But our code does require that you can't put this level of density on a substandard road. McKendree is a substandard road, so that's why they're improving it. But the reason the condition says that they'll connect to the Vision Road once it's built is because that's going to be the main road that connects Overpass Road up to State Route 52.
Did you want the MPUD layer on too, John?
That'd be helpful. I think it'd be helpful. So some context. The staff report said that this rink was located in the central business district of the connected city plan. So I was trying to see how that
Well, that won't be reflected on the MPUD layer, just the existing MPUDs will.
Is there something that would show that?
Thank you. There you go.
I anticipate that. Yeah, the development patterns, as you know, usually it's rooftops and then the businesses come in. And what's happening is the rooftops are typically to the eastern side of this area. And then from this area over towards the interstate is your business core and your urban core. Gotcha. Those projects, most of those are under discussion and under review. Pasco Town Center obviously is in. That's a little bit of a different one. That is not an MPUD, so it's not going to pop up on the MPUD layer like that. There's a development agreement with them and some other things that are done there. So it doesn't necessarily show here, but this area is where these types of higher densities and intensities are proposed for the future.
Brad, where does Pasco Town Center come down to? Does it come down to?
It comes down to the middle. If you can zoom in there a little bit. Okay, you see the little kind of box of grids there? Right in the middle of your screen, where McKendree Road curves and turns and goes north.
Mm-hmm.
That little point at the bottom right there, I believe.
Where the two roads intersect?
Yeah, where McKendree and I can't read the letter. Which road is this?
H.
Dendel?
AG.
Yeah, you come down to the south. There you go. See where the two make that little V? I believe Pasco Town Center is
Yes, I remember that.
that piece that comes down is where they're going to stop. So it's just north of this property.
And then I will also
Are
tell
they
you,
going to be required to construct the Boyette Road, Vision Road?
I believe there are agreements in place collectively between the developers and or the county to construct the various infrastructure.
Okay, so this is, it's not that this is a Vision Road that's 25 years
Correct.
away.
Correct, no, it is in the very near future.
Okay.
Yes.
well, at least the northern portion is.
Well, okay,
Yes.
it's a start.
And then I will also tell you on the south side, near Overpass, there's two MPUDs, that you haven't seen them yet, but they're in the system, at the interchange of Overpass and I-75, that intend to build the road from Overpass north up to their northern boundaries. So at some point, yes, you'll have the board, in the fairly near future, you will have the road built on the north side and the south side, and there will be a gap in the middle.
Yeah, if you look on this map, you see the little lake kind of on the bottom there in the middle. That's about the northern boundary of where the southern MPUD that David is referring to is going to come to. And then you can see it's a very small gap there. So it's going to be built down to that and then up to that piece. So it's moving pretty quickly. We're not talking 20, 30 years down the road. We're talking near future.
And is there a plan to fill the gap or?
Yes, as all the projects are coming in and the developers are coming in, that area is transitioning. We realize it now. It does exist as very rural farmland area, but the comp plan and the connected city plans do reflect that as something different in the future. So as it's moving towards that at its own pace, depending on land acquisition.
But
and whatnot.
if no developer comes in the middle area, then it would be up to the county to build it and possibly have to use eminent domain.
That's where I was going.
Yes.
Okay.
We could have, we
So
could
if they
build
have
it
to,
if
it
we
will be
wanted to.
used, is what I'm getting to connect the road.
That's a important collector road for the county, so yes, that is a road that we'd use eminent domain for if necessary.
So Pasco Town Center is gonna be required to build Boyette to their southern boundary, not beyond?
They're not required to build south of their boundary.
Okay.
Nor are the MPDs to the south required to build north of their boundary.
Right. Well, they don't have that power.
They don't have eminent domain power is the biggest reason.
Right.
They might have been willing to, but they're not gonna get condemned
So
property.
the gap in the road is essentially kind of that angled piece that's between the, kind of where the Vision Road bends up to the north there.
Yes. In theory, somebody could use McKendree to drive on that gap temporarily, but it's, as you can see, McKendree is not an ideal alignment for a roadway.
Are there any pending development plans on any of the adjacent parcels to this project?
So I believe there are some discussions and pre-application meetings that have happened. I'm not sure if there's a plan. There's one that's about two sites down for a camp area. Again, this area in the future is anticipated to be larger scale business type of area. So it's going to be higher intensity. And that just, you know, the sites right now don't accommodate that the way the landowners are. This is something that likely a developer would come and assemble some properties and do something and bring an MPUD in, at which point we would address the road through that. They would have to build their portion to access their site. And then, you know, obviously the CIP, it is an important road. If the county decided that they needed to fill in any gaps, we could with that. But there are no large projects in right now that would be able to accommodate that type of improvement.
As a general concept, this road is trying to fulfill the same function as Old Pasco Road on the other side of the interstate. It's basically the county's parallel road to the interstate system.
My apologies, I've got to take a step back in history here. I'm trying to understand fully what's going on out here, so I don't know if it's a question for Tammy or for you, Brad, but as I look at this, and I know I see reference in the actual memo itself that once the MPUD is approved, that this facility is going to be given a CO. My understanding is there's a building there now. Is the building just not being used?
So my understanding is that the building was approved through the process. There was a cap placed on a number of people that could actually use the building through the special exception. It's only the number of people. So it's not being used to its full potential right now. This MPUD would allow it to be used to its full potential.
So, just process and procedural question. Why are they not asking for a modification of the special exception? Why the MPUD?
That was actually a county request because this is Connected City, and Connected City has a lot of special features and ideas that you can employ and that you can work on both currently with the MPUD and the types of uses and the mixes of uses, but also downstream and how you do the designs and some of the ability to do some unique things on the sites in the future.
So can you give me examples of the conditions that may have been imposed that would reflect that?
Not sure I can off the top of my head.
I'm just not seeing anything here that particularly is a requirement because of Connected City. I'm not saying we can't approve it as an MPUD, just curious why not the special exception.
Well, I can tell you one reason. Special exception does not go to the Board of County Commissioners, and we do believe there is some public opposition to this item, and I think the board wants to hear it.
Well, I'm gonna kind of go another step further, and I guess as I look at the MPUD approval, I see that there's a building there now, which I'm assuming is the hockey rink. There's parking spaces. I'm assuming there's the site plan things that would have been required. Because I think this thing's kind of stepped through, I think, and I don't even know that it's followed the normal protocol. I think they built the building, then they came in and asked for the special exception, if I understand correctly. But now the building's out there and they're asking for MPUD, but the MPUD they're asking for is for an academy for 150 students. Are there other additions and there are other things that they're asking to build on this site? I mean, what is it completely that they're asking for? They're asking us to be able to use the rink for 150 people?
No, it's 150 students and accessory uses, so they do intend to have some tournaments that where other people come in that are not just the students. There could be, I mean, so I don't know that it would be just.
So what does the special exception allow them to do today? That's what I'm trying to figure out. What entitlement do they have and what's new? What's new?
I don't remember. I think Denise or
So
Brad.
they can only have 20 people at the facility today.
All right, but are they running a school?
Yes,
Yes.
they can do instruction, private instruction.
Okay, so that's what
basically
I'm
with
trying to
students.
understand. So we're not giving any different entitlement to run a school. It's just the number that can attend.
The big issue was that when the special exception came in, they were trying to stay under the threshold that was needed to not improve McKendree Road. That's the main trigger that happened. And so they intentionally came in with a very low number of students so they would not have to improve McKendree Road. At some point, they said, we want more students, and we said, then you need to improve McKendree Road.
Okay.
So that's, if you're asking the main driver for, could that have been done through a special exception? Possibly, or amendment to the special exception, but the main driver was McKendree Road. No pun intended.
So the master plan that's shown in our agenda packet essentially includes, so we see that the existing building that shows on the aerial. Then there's other, so were these other facilities approved under the special exception? Because there's another 28,000 square foot building that's down by McHenry, which based on this aerial is not constructed unless the aerial's older.
It's old.
It is old?
Yeah, these are 2020 aerials.
Okay. So all these facilities are built that's shown on the master plan? Is that accurate? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, the MPUD really allows for it to be used to host some events. You know, this a sheet of ice is a fairly unique feature. You can't just go down the street and find one of those. So it's something that we felt in this area of Connected City would be a good type of draw for both economics, potentially for tourist type of things, and having a location in this area, especially for youth sports, for tournaments and other things like that.
So I saw the site plan and I saw it looked like the parking requirements or calculation was based on student count. What's the plan to handle parking if there's tournaments?
So we.
Or has there been an estimate done or some kind of study to determine that that's adequate parking? Or?
Well, if you read the conditions, there is a specific condition that requires them to have shared parking agreements with other areas to provide adequate parking. It's very similar to what the hockey arena downtown. They don't own all of those parking spaces that the hockey arenas downtown uses.
Well, to be clear, Brad, or they have to submit a new site plan that adds more parking spaces.
Or they have to submit a site plan that does more themselves if they want to do that, or a combination of both.
Well, I guess the question is, if we were to approve this MPUD as presented today, can they host a tournament?
They'd be limited to the 58 spaces they have today.
58 spaces on site, and then they can have people park off-site where they have agreements to do so, and it's appropriate to do so.
What stops them from like parking on the grass on their site?
Same thing anywhere else. Anywhere else in the county. It would be a code enforcement issue if they violate that.
But I will tell you that sometimes when they have these tournaments, having just gone to a big one, a lot of times a bus brings in a whole team.
Yes.
I mean, so, and the parents aren't even there. So it's possible that you could have a tournament where just 3 buses come and.
Well, I'm not guessing that's likely because we want to serve alcohol, so I'm guessing we're not serving it to the kids. And not that I'm opposed to them serving alcohol here either, but.
The alcohol is also for other types of uses. For example, This is a site that could host companies' holiday Christmas parties. You know, come and do a holiday Christmas skate with your company or something, and then you can serve alcohol at those events. So there can be other things there that can help support the programs that are going on here.
Potentially a nice figure skating.
Yes, exactly. It could be any number of things. And that's one of the things about
Thinking
Connected
you
City
better
is
not
we-
drink and skate. That's probably not a good idea either.
Not advisable.
Yeah, let's not recommend that for the county. We need our staff to come to work the next day. But, you know, that's one of the things about Connected City. We want to try to promote those types of opportunities that are fairly regional, very local, close, nearby. And this would provide that.
Brad, let me ask a question. I see this is listed as a school.
Yes.
So I look in land development code definitions for school, and in my opinion, this doesn't meet the definition of a school. It's not really an educational facility. It seems more like it's a business. So am I wrong, or is this?
So Denise, if you would talk about that briefly? This is the same situation that happens with karate and other.
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So there's a definition in the land development code for a term called a specialty school. And I will get you that definition in a second, and it would fall under that definition. So, I mean, if you would prefer that we use the term specialty school, we can do that, but I mean, that's what we call it, a school.
Yeah, I would like that, because it
Sure.
seems like it's more of a business than a school, and karate schools like that are usually located in a commercial area.
Are these, they're not like full-time, 8-hour-a-day
No.
students?
No.
This is, you know, after school?
Yeah.
Yeah, so
On
specialty
weekends.
school is defined in the LDC as a school primarily devoted to giving instruction in musical, dancing, dramatic, artistic, linguistic, athletic, or other similar special subjects.
It seems more like, yeah.
It may not hurt to include that language for consistency, to define, as defined by.
Okay.
We can add that.
Any more questions for Brad?
I don't.
So you still need to hear from the applicant.
All right, thanks, Brad. So, the applicant's present. If you come forward and state your name and address, please.
Good afternoon, my name is Russ Henderson. Address is 9175 McKendree Road, Westwood Chapel. So honestly, what I just witnessed is exactly kind of what's been going on. There's a lot of confusion. So I'd like to tell you kind of what we are and what we really are. We're registered with the Florida Department of Education. We are a school. We're actually doing state testing currently. Our students are going to be finishing up school here in the next couple of days. What we are is a school that also teaches hockey. So
you are a school? I mean, you teach reading, writing, arithmetic, history?
Absolutely. We'll have full
Okay.
accreditation within a couple of years.
Gotcha.
So, which is why we want to increase our student body. Student body right now is 13 students, and that's because of the special exception. The special exception itself, we actually, when we submitted the current building that's on site, as well as all the parking and the existing buildings and the existing asphalt that's on site, was all part of our submission back in June of 2021, whenever the Planning Commission voted to allow the special exception. So everything you see now that's on our site was part of our submittal to you, the Planning Commission back in 2021, whenever it was voted on and approved. So nothing new has been added, nothing new was built after the fact. All of our permits were sought in accordance with that special exception and the way it was built. I'm trying to think of anything else. Feel free to ask any questions you have.
Well, I might withdraw that language request then, because it may not be a specialty school, so maybe we should make sure that the definition fits exactly what they are.
If you're going on the record, that is a school, and I can check on that too with the.
Yes, sir. You can check with the Florida Department of Education. It's registered.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. And actually, we had one of Pasco's fire marshals out last week doing his inspection just to ensure we were following all the guidelines to ensure our accreditation with the county as well.
Okay. So could you address the parking question? Because, I mean, you're aware of the condition that says you're limited to your 58 spaces that you have.
Mm-hmm.
How do you in fact intend to deal when you have a larger group come in? What is your plan?
Well, currently, whenever we develop the site, when you look at the site plan that we submitted, we had some existing asphalt and everything that was used for parking. I mean, we use it today. Every landscaper to come, our landscapers to come out to maintain the property, other maintenance folks that come out to maintain the property. They don't park within our school parking lot that you see within the MPUD or within our site plan development. We're a single sheet. You know, we're an NHL sheet, you know, 200 by 85, like, you know, every other ice rink should be. But we can only play one game at a time. A tournament, we've never been asked to host mini tournaments. Advent Health has reached out, and a few others have reached out asking us to co-host, meaning when they can't fulfill the need, then we are able to help them. But it would always be one game at a time. So you're picturing 30 kids at a time that are in and out of the building. So, you know, during those tournament weekends, well, I'll take that back, probably 60 kids or so. So you kind of factor that in with traffic. My hope would be that I would be able to follow kind of examples and precedents set by Wiregrass Sports Ranch. If you go there on a soccer, volleyball, basketball weekend, you're parking way down one of the roundabouts trying to get back to the venue, and you're using all the backdoor grass space. That's not what we're designed for. We are primarily a school. We're a school first. There's a lot of attention given to the alcohol stuff. That is not something we really genuinely care to explore too much. That's going to be done by third party. The waivers or permits that have to be sought, if there's any, we're not seeking those as a school. That's going to be done by a foundation that is set up to support the school, or like you guys said, if someone wants to host a special venue or something with us, they would be required to do those by our rules, because we are also a Christian school. But we do have a venue. We do have something that's very sought after in the state, especially with, you know, 3-time Stanley Cup champions that like to keep repeating and disappointing us lately. But, you know, it's...
Let's not talk about that.
I know, I'm sorry. But if you want, I can introduce you to a couple of guys once in a while. So, but our purpose primarily is a school. We're a school 7:30 to 4:30 every day. Within those hours, we don't do public skates. We don't do anything else. The only thing that we plan to do outside of that normal, well, nothing different within the school day. We are looking forward to the MPUD being pushed through so that we can partner with the Tampa Bay Lightning and start attacking girls hockey development, which they loved our plan for, but we got to get there. So
I just want to, I'm not sure you fully answered my question. If you actually have, I realize you're a one game or you only one sheet, but if you had a game on that one sheet, do you think you can accommodate them all in your existing spaces?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there seating inside this arena?
There is not yet, and the reason being is because it was kind of pointless to spend 150 grand on stadiums without approval of going over 20 people in our building.
Is there, I mean, are you planning to put seating?
Yes, sir. We already have a bid for it, and we're kind of just waiting for them to give us a timeline.
So then, well, I'll let you finish and then I'll ask staff.
Traditionally, just so you know, if you go to Advent Health, they have 4 sheets of ice. Sorry, they have 5 sheets of ice. 2 of them have seating. The other 3 are just standing rooms.
And the seating you're planning to put in is commensurate with the spaces that you're...
Yes, sir. You know, we designed for it ahead of time. Everything we did, designed ahead of time. The only reason we sought the special exception, as opposed to doing an MPUD beginning, is because of the election results of 2020. We'd already designed our building, already planned to get our building, and as we were walking through this process with the county, we were told the fastest way to erect the building, get it off the ground, was going to be a special exception. Our building still sat in the dirt for, I don't know, 8, 10, well, longer than that before we could erect it. But that was the only reason we went that way, because we were told that the special exception would be a faster route than the MPUD. And it was, so, and we're thankful that they allowed us to do it. And the bullet we had to bite was, for the first year, 13 students, as opposed to what we can really hold.
Okay.
And
Any other
I think
questions?
somebody asked a question about a CO earlier. You do have a remodel permit that you've submitted?
I do. So people use the word CO, and I think depending on who's using it, sometimes they don't understand. We have a CO. We have a certificate of occupancy. You can't operate inside of a home or a building without one. We obviously have one. On ours, there's that stamp of 20-person max within the building. So we do have a CO. We currently are going through a remodel plans review with the county, because the existing building that you see there, we want to utilize that as classrooms. So we're going through it, and we use private providers. It kind of takes some stress off the county, as well as speeds up the process for it. However, with this being a reclassification, they're doing an in-depth review of the life safety measures to make sure structurally it's going to be sound as we remodel it.
But I believe they're gonna issue a new CO when you're done with that, correct?
For that building, they would have to. Once we start construction on that building, it would no longer be usable, but to be quite honest, I bought it in November or December of 2019. We've never used that building for anything other than storing some furniture for my buddy that can't get his house built.
Okay, any other questions? If not, is there anyone here in opposition? So these are all your friends you brought?
No, sir, these are the parents of my kids.
Okay.
Do any of them want to say anything? They don't have to be in opposition, with all due respect to the chair. If they want to say something, they can.
They're too bashful. Yeah, I've never let them in the building and never seen their kids play, you know. Gary here would complain quite a bit about me, but, you know, it's just, it's unfortunate. You know, it's hard to have a hockey club that we don't play. We had our first game in Clearwater 2 weekends ago, and it was phenomenal. We took some boys to Chicago a week ago and actually had junior scouts trying to get our kids' numbers already. So we're building something pretty cool. It'd be great to share it with more people.
Okay, well, thank you, and I think you got one volunteer here. Could you get your name and address, please?
My name is Jens Johansen. My address is, we moved here a year ago. It's in St. Petersburg. And I was sworn in together with the rest of the people here.
Okay.
We came, as you can probably hear from the accent, from Denmark. And we have a son who's attending the school. And we've been playing high-level youth hockey in Scandinavia, mostly in Sweden. And I would say this program is second to none. Both from, we attended it from a hockey perspective, but during the year, we have been amazed with the schooling perspective. So I would really, really love it if he could continue there and if you could keep building this, because it will attend some great hockey talent, help the Tampa get into some potentially another great years in the future. We really, really, really are amazed by the program the Hendersons have made out there.
Well, thank you very much. And where did you say you came from?
Denmark.
Okay, I thought it was Georgia.
Well, should have been, but we moved over here and are part of the American
Maybe it was
now.
Southern Denmark.
Southern Denmark, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, can I just ask staff one question? Tammy?
Yeah.
Since we don't have any opposition here, do you know why this was on regular? Did we get some written opposition?
No, just some vocal opposition. Not even necessarily opposition like per se. Just somebody was vocal, and so I figured just to play it on, put it on the safe side, put it in a regular.
Is there
But
anything?
that person did not show up.
Is there anything in this MPUD that cannot be approved inside a special exception?
Since you can condition a special exception, probably not.
Okay.
What do you think, David?
I think you should be real careful. That's what I think.
I'm not sure if I understand the statement, but okay.
I think you have a right to remain silent. You probably ought to use it.
I think it's possible. I mean, it's hard for me to answer that question without going through every single condition in the MPD and trying to figure out whether it's something that's appropriate for a special exception or not.
Right, and I don't do special exceptions myself, so I'm not all completely versed on what is appropriate for a special exception, since I do MPUDs.
Okay, if you just want me to cut to the chase. Yeah. If there's nothing in this application that couldn't be approved outside the special exception, I don't personally find it fair to the applicant to force him into the MPUD process to get the approval he seeks. Just so that you don't get to say, well, we have this process over here, or we have this process over here, and we're going to deny you this process because we want to force this to the board. He has the right under our code to use that process and have it stop right here. That's not fair.
So
If I could-
staff will have to address it because I wasn't involved in this conversation.
Yeah, I can speak to that briefly. To become part of Connected City and avail yourself of all the options related to Connected City, you need to do the MPUD.
Okay, but I asked, was there something specific to Connected City that's in
So
this?
a lot of the things are not necessarily conditions of approval. Connected City has a different land development code associated with it, with different allowances and different ways of doing things, different types of things that can be
Are
done
those
downstream.
required to support this development?
Not required necessarily, but can certainly be available.
Then I maintain my position. That's not fair.
The only thing I don't know, and I am not, again, I was not involved in this discussion, is there is a threshold, a trip threshold, where if you exceed that number of trips, you have to be in MPD under our code.
Okay, and if that's the case,
I just
then
don't
I'm
know,
fine with
I
it.
don't know if they, with the 150 students, they may have gone above that threshold. I don't.
Likely.
Somebody'd have to answer that question. I know there is a threshold in the code that says if you're above that number of trips, you have to be an MPV. Because you're going through a traffic analysis, or typically there's more stringent type conditions when you're doing a bigger traffic analysis, but again, and they did do one in this case. So that may be the reason, part of the reason. I just don't know if they hit that threshold or not.
Anybody answer?
Tammy, do you know?
I do not know. The threshold is 1,200 data trips. I don't know if they count this.
We do have transportation folks on
There was a
WebEx.
time, there was a time in the phasing analysis done for this project, so somebody probably would know the trip generation.
After this is Stacy Burgess, transportation planner due with planning and development for the private school. They are for the 150 students. They are at a daily trip of 372 trips. So that's the trip generation for this project.
And what is the amount that triggers an MPUD?
If I'm not mistaken, I believe it's 1,200.
So they're not above the threshold.
Correct.
Okay, well, I guess that's not the reason.
Does the MPUD provide potential future, future abilities to do things that you can't do under exceptions? In other words, if he wants to grow the school more in the future, or do different things that aren't currently allowed under exceptions.
So
yes, it
More
does,
flexibility,
it does give you more
that's what-
flexibility to add uses if you're an existing MPUD. Yes.
And there may be, he
With the
may
approval
want to do that. I'm just saying at the outset of the hearing, when I asked why this wasn't done under the
I know
special
exactly what
exception,
yeah.
the answer we got was because we wanted to force it to the commission.
I said that could be a reason. I wasn't in those conversations when
So,
staff asked for the MPUD.
yeah, the reason was the long-term benefit of doing a connected city MPUD versus doing a special exception under the existing code is very different. The long-term benefit allows you to avail yourself of the connected city land development code items for any changes that you make on your property, any development that you do on your property, and all those other things. Where you
I
go down
understand
those.
that. Back in November, the commissioner that put me in this seat hosted a session with the new county administrator of problems in the construction industry, and I see Mr. Shearbaum's here, and this gentleman, I met both of them. Actually, Mr. Shearbaum's my client over there. And what I met was a very frustrated gentleman that day. He was frustrated with the process he was trying to get there, and he expressed to me that at every time he tried to turn around, there were being obstacles thrown in his way. And what I'm seeing today is, well, I figured, well, I didn't know what all the facts were, and I couldn't very well tell from the staff report. I'm not going to get into that. But it sure looks to me that that's what happened to him. And now he has to go. I know he's spent a significant amount of legal expenses. I'm actually curious as to where counsel is today. But he's put out a lot of money. He's been put through a lot of grief, and it was unnecessary. There was a simpler process and a less expensive process to do that. And the county, from what I'm hearing, could have gotten everything. I have no objection with him being required to provide the corridor or construct a portion of the Vision Road to correct the substandard road conditions. Those are the things that are required him. But to force him into a process that our code doesn't, that's just not fair. I hope that doesn't happen again. Clearly, we're here to vote on this particular case today, but I don't ever want to see that happen again.
So I respectfully disagree with that because Connected City is a very unique area with unique governing documents and regulatory documents that
But you
allow for
haven't shown
things.
me anything here today that
It's
is
not all here.
specific to Connected
It's not all
City.
here. There's a multi-hundred-page document of land development code that is not a part of the MPUD.
But
It's
you
in it
haven't
by
told me he
reference.
can't do this without being part of the Connected City or do that under those regulations. You haven't said he can't
By-
do it
by
under standard
rezoning
land development regulations.
As a Connected City MPUD like this, he avails himself of that other land development
I
code.
understand that, and that may prove to be a benefit in the
It
future
is,
to
and that is
him.
the
I'm
option
not
that we
saying that may
provided.
or may not be. What I'm saying is, he had a choice, and the county attorney suggested, I'm sorry, David, if I'm not trying to put words into your mouth, but the way I understood it was, yeah, you needed to do this because we're forcing this to go to the board for a vote.
No, I said that could be a reason because special exceptions don't go to the board for a vote.
Well, nonetheless, that's not a reason. The staff doesn't have the luxury of deciding, well, I'm not going to offer you the process that's legally allowed to you because I've decided that you should have to go to the board for the vote.
So we provided the options in the beginning of the special exception with the pros and cons of going that route, as with the CCMPD many, many years ago when this first started. So we've done that. The special exception route was taken, and they've run into some hurdles there. This option is a better option overall for the long term of the project.
So, John,
And
can
we
we ask the
recommended
applicant
that.
that question?
You get to ask questions just like I do.
You should be asking the chair that, not John.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
Yes.
if that's okay with the chair.
Yeah. I don't know, let me ask John.
No, you're the chair, and you're going to remain there.
So can you weigh in on that, what the process was that was offered to you, and were you fully explained those options and chose to do what you're doing now based on that?
For sure. First, I'd like to say one thing. Tammy and Brad and all the staff have been fantastic.
They are.
I mean, I have about 3 people that maybe we should research, but the rest of them have been absolutely lights out. I mean, top to bottom, I've been very impressed and very happy. One of my favorite places to visit is West Pasco Government Center. You got some great people there, really. I mean, you're understaffed, but it's not your fault. It's just post-COVID, I guess. But, you know, there were tons of discussions. So in our pre-application meeting that occurred in November of 2019, we went in there with the idea of building something different. We really did. Once we were told what we were building in the middle of, we figured eventually we were going to be eminent domain, or they're going to make us tear it down or something, because it wasn't what it is now. And I would love for every one of you to come visit. But we also were kind of answering a calling that was given to us that we didn't quite understand yet. So as we were walking through the process with Brad and Denise and the other folks involved, there was talk about Connected City, and there was potential gains to being, I think the term that was being used was opting into Connected City. I don't know what those are, honestly. I know that Brad has mentioned it before. Whenever I had counsel, I had asked them, you know, I'm being told we should opt in. There's some benefits to it, but never have we really documented anything that I can recall. I'm happy to research my emails or go through public records and see if that's different, but I don't recall anything that's been specific to our project as far as how we operate or how we built it. I would happily have taken some credits in the process if that was possible, but you know, I don't recall anything. And Brad can send it with me if he remembers it different, but I don't.
Okay.
Well, I mean, one big advantage of Connected City is you can get credits for building certain roadways, but he's not building the Vision roadway, so that's not. And that may have been part of the early discussions. There may have been some early discussions about him maybe building part of the Vision roadway and getting credits for it, which you can only do if you're in Connected City. But somehow this morphed into where he's not building any Division Road, he's doing McKendree instead, so. You know, some of the, I wasn't in these prior conversations, but I can tell you that as a general rule, that's the main reason people do opt into connected cities. They want the credits for building roadways.
In this case, that's not much of a benefit.
There also, I believe, is a longer build-out date for the MPUDs. Tammy or Brad?
It's already built.
Well, but if he was building more, yeah, well.
Sounds like he's got a lot more to build, honestly.
I mean, he may have more to build, but he's capped at 150 students currently, so he'd have to probably come back through the process anyway to build more.
So you have no objection of going through the process that they've set out for you, is that correct?
Well, to answer honestly, if I had to skip the process and get the same rights as everyone else as I hear it, I'd love to take that option.
Well, unfortunately, you haven't applied for a special exception, so we have to vote on, I think we have to vote on the matter that's before us, but I'm just sending that out as a warning in the future. Don't do that.
Right.
And that's not fair. He's not a land use expert.
No, and in all honesty, if you read through the COAs, for the most part, they seem to be agreeable across the board. I'm no attorney. I don't understand some of the legal jargon, and and I know David's fantastic, but outside of being able to park on my own grass, I don't see we don't seem to be in opposition of anything. So I mean, it's really either way. The only thing that scares me about the next meeting is, I know that we have some people that support us and that visit us, and there's some that won't even show up to our gate. So that does make me very nervous.
They didn't show up here.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm talking about other folks.
Looks like you got plenty of support.
So, the conditions I don't think would have been materially different with a special exception versus an MPUD.
Okay.
Either way, he would have had to approve McKendree. Either way, he would have had to dedicate right away for the Division Road. I don't think those would have been materially different.
All right, so if are there any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, the lady in the front did ask to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I would like to say one more thing before Ms. Priscilla comes up. It has been a very tough journey. We had hopes of dates that were going to hit that never hit. There was always the guesswork of MPUDs take about 12 months, so plan for 12 months. Sometimes they're faster. We're literally at month 15, 16, and that's if you don't count the 6 months we spent doing timing and phasing that had to be done to be able to go to where we're trying to go to. So it's been tough. When you're a school, you do enrollment typically in February, March, so we missed that window. When you're a hockey club, you do tryouts on May 1st for your upcoming season. We missed that date. We have tons of kids that were optimistic about being in our school now that are probably gonna have to play for another hockey club and miss out on another year of what we do as far as our development. And then depending on how this plays out, I don't know, June 6th is a big deadline for us. June 28th is an even bigger deadline because that's kind of the axe. So whatever decision is made, I mean, it's kind of a big deal for us. So I appreciate you guys letting me talk.
Just for the record, though, the existing facility that's out there now, the only thing that's been used for since it was constructed are the 13 kids in your school?
That is incorrect. The way it's set up now, it's primary use. The way the special exception reads is we're only allowed to have 20 bodies associated with our school. It didn't place. It literally doesn't say occupancy or capacity restriction at all for my building. My building under Life Safety Code of Pasco County is actually 1,209 people. The note itself was placed on our CO by a staffer.
Okay, because I had a different, and I didn't go back and review the record, but I had a different recollection of the special exception that was approved. I thought you were limited to 20 people using the hockey rink at one time.
No, sir, it was written to limit us to 20 people associated with the school.
Okay,
so that means students,
that means
faculty,
students and
janitors,
faculty. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And that's the way my attorney interpreted it at the time. Literally, whenever we were building and we had a note placed on our permit that we were going to be limited to a 20-person occupancy, I sought counsel and they said that's not how it reads, so you don't need to worry. August 17th or whenever we got that note on our CO, it was a shock.
Okay. Again, I don't have the special exception in front of me. I didn't remember it that way, but if that's what you're representing,
and according to code,
that's what you represent under oath. I don't have a problem with that.
Understood. And according to code enforcement, who was sitting out front of our gate for about 6 weeks, They cannot restrict anyone that drives in and out of our gate. Their rule was they had to restrict the amount of people that walk through the front door and were in the building at one time.
Okay, let's give this young lady a chance to speak.
Priscilla Julian, 20109 Fairhill Way, Tampa,
I'm sorry,
Florida.
your name again? I couldn't hear you.
Priscilla Julian, 20109 Fairhill Way, Tampa, Florida, 33647. So I'm up here on behalf of the Ness parents.
Could you speak right into that microphone? Thank
Yes.
you.
I'm on
'Cause
behalf.
she's recording it, that's
Okay.
why.
Just sharing on behalf of Ness parents. We are beyond blessed to have this opportunity, and Nest Hockey is not only amazing coaches and the opportunity to do something that our boys would never get anywhere else. The education is incredible. My son wakes up every day and he wants to go to school. What 8th grade boy wants to go to school? He never did ever until this year. He wants to go to school. He would like school all year round if we could have school in the summer. So that being said, we drop our kids off in the morning, we leave, and, we have to come back in the afternoon, we leave, we don't get to see their progression, we don't see, what are they working on? Oh, look, he's grown, I see this, great, growth that, we hear about, but we don't get to see. And we don't get to volunteer, we don't get to help, we don't get to do the things that at a normal school as a parent you'd be able to do. So we implore you, this is a great mission. The Henderson's an amazing family. All of the boys are being trained to be men of character. And we just, thank you for this opportunity and your consideration.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, anybody else? I guess that's it. So, I hear a motion.
I'd move to approve item AP9 as presented.
I will strongly second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion of the motion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Very good. Congratulations. And you flew somebody all the way in from Denmark to speak on your behalf.
Probably a little warm here for him.
That's right.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. All right, Denise, where does that put us?
We're done?
All right.
You wanted to hear more?
It is kind of early.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about,
Motion to adjourn.
it's about 2 hours early. We're out of here. Yeah.
Waterways and wildlife depend on you to keep them healthy. Excess fertilizer, grass clippings, trash, oils, and pet waste wash into gutters and storm drains when it rains. Stormwater carries these pollutants directly into our lakes and rivers, creating an unhealthy environment for fish, waterfowl, and other aquatic animals. Storm drains are meant for clean rainwater. Most other discharges are illegal. If you suspect an illicit discharge, please contact Pasco County Department of Public Works at 727-834-3611.